Alright.
Hello.
It's us, Kino Inferno, your favourite movie podcast, where Bustin makes us feel good.
Bustin does indeed make us feel good, and it feels good to be back as well, because as of the release of this, I think it's been just about a month since we last released an episode. So
listen, say your name.
I'm Marc.
I'm going to say my name, Aidan. Yes, it has been, you're correct, it's been a little while, Marc. We should probably do a little bit of admin up top.
Yes.
There was an episode that's been advertised. We mentioned we were going to do it at the end of the last episode.
We did, yes.
We're not doing that one just yet, so, calm down. There will be an episode coming up with the aforementioned guest star. Don't know when, we'll let you know.
Yeah. Like always, we say we're going to do something on the show, and then retroactively we change it, which is kind of in keeping with what we're talking about today, I guess.
Because today we're trying out a new format. Don't worry, Kino Inferno Classic is still going to be produced at the Kino Inferno factory. We've just got a little bit of vanilla Kino Inferno, zero, no added sugar content. And what it is me and Marc, we talk about a franchise, an overview of a franchise, because all movies these days are franchises.
Literally all of them. Every single one of them. There's not a single one that isn't a franchise in some way or another.
Yeah, they all have a little post-credit scene at the end, so you come and see the next one. And we just kind of want to get into that a little bit, because the mainstream Kino Inferno episodes, we can bounce all over the map with cult favourites and, oh, have you heard of this movie? Have you seen this movie? Oh, you don't know what this is. But we know what you like to watch, listeners. You like to sit around watching fucking franchise slop that just feeds you your own nostalgia back to you. And then you think, you know what? I want to listen to people talk about that on a podcast.
And possibly slam it.
And possibly slam it. Or possibly talk about all the amusing bits of lore that they chop and change throughout the franchise. That's what we're doing. It's Aidan and Marc versus franchise. This is an experimental one, listeners, and I'll tell you straight up front, slightly less structured than usual.
Yeah, it's not going to be a usual Kino Inferno deep dives.
So I'm just laughing. I'm laughing at the idea that the show is in any way structured.
Yeah, no, we have a very flimsy structure.
But it's even flimsier this time.
Yeah, even flimsier. This is off the cuff, straight from the hip.
Straight from the balls.
Straight from the balls, diving in dry. Let's do this.
And normally we'd edit out a comment like that, but there's going to be minimal editing on these ones. So what we're saying is this. Every few weeks or so, we want to do an episode that's a bit less work. So you're going to be seeing more of these. If this goes well, you'll be seeing more of these. Aidan and Marc versus... I don't want to give the game away, but we've already discussed doing the Scream franchise.
We have indeed.
That'll be coming up at some point in the not-too-distant future, when I can get to a cinema and see 5 Cream.
5 Cream. Honestly, I have seen that movie, and obviously I will keep all thoughts on that until we discuss it on the show, but the fact that it's called 5 Cream is probably one of its biggest sins, in my opinion.
5 Cream. So look forward to that. But anyway, we thought we'd start this, this little experiment with a franchise that we know is near and dear to many of our listeners' hearts, many people's hearts. The Ghostbusters franchise. You know, those 4 Ghostbusting lads. Well, not just the 4 Ghostbusting lads. As we get into the later installments, there's some other people start busting. And boy, it makes them... Boy, does it make them feel good. So, Marc, when we discussed doing Ghostbusters, we kind of talked about how it's a franchise that neither of us are particularly massive fans of. And not that we have any animosity towards it. I don't think... We're not like, fuck Ghostbusters. We're just...
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd seen the original as a kid, but it's been so long that I don't really remember. Outside of like the really kind of iconic stuff, like, you know, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and the Proton Packs and stuff, like, and all the stuff that's kind of ingrained.
And boy,
in
they
pop
will
culture.
not let you forget about that Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, will they?
They won't. They just won't.
They loved it.
Yeah. And again, I knew all the kind of iconic stuff from the movie, but when coming back to watch all 4 of them, it kind of occurred to me that there was so much about Ghostbusters that I just did not remember or didn't realise. Like, it's amazing how popular this franchise is in like sort of families and like kids sort of circles, when the first movie is really not in any way intended at kids, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, because and we'll maybe get into this when we break down the individual components a bit more, but like, yeah, watching the first one especially, it does call to mind that time in the sort of 80s, 90s, where stuff that families would watch was not necessarily aimed at kids. It was just kind of, action adventure movies, maybe comedies that kids could also get into. Whereas now I feel like it's the other way around. Like, most mainstream blockbusters are kind of kids movies that adults can not feel too embarrassed to watch,
Yeah, and I feel like maybe the sort of stuff that you were mentioning that from like the 80s and 90s, like one of the closest examples we've seen to that, which isn't in film, but like Stranger Things is very much in that ilk, I think, which we'll definitely end up discussing.
Yes, Afterlife definitely is leaning on Stranger Things' goodwill a little bit.
But it's not just leaning on it, it's literally inside
took one of their actors.
Yeah, literally.
I'm surprised that little girl wasn't old, what's-her-face from Stranger Things, you know the one, the psychic.
I'm surprised she wasn't Gozer, to be honest.
yeah.
Like, she could have been. Well, actually, no, that'd be weird. No, we're not.
Anyway, Gozer is an adult.
That's true. Who I thought was Sigourney Weaver. I genuinely thought that was Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
It's not, obviously.
No, I can see how you came to that conclusion.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's Sigourney Weaver in makeup, and then I watched a little documentary about Ghostbusters and suddenly went, oh wait, that's not Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, about 30 years younger than Sigourney Weaver for one.
I just thought it was, the special effects in that movie were pretty good for its time. I thought maybe they just, dolled up Sigourney Weaver. Not in the new one, I meant in the original.
Oh, in the old one? Oh, I see.
Yeah, I thought that was Sigourney Weaver. Apparently it's not, so...
No, okay. Well, anyway, we're jumping all over the map.
We are.
I will simply add to that I'm in a similar boat to you, where like I'd seen Ghostbusters 1 and 2 as a kid. I think I'd seen them a few times, because I definitely remembered more of each than I thought I did when I was watching. Because for the listeners' benefit, I have watched all 4 Ghostbusters movies back to back today.
You're a brave man.
Yeah, so I've been busting all day long.
You're at risk of going blind, mate.
I already wear glasses. I've been busted. I've been busting. I'm full of bust goo. We'll get off that joke eventually.
Yeah, no, not yet. I think we still could squeeze a bit more out of it.
Yeah, what I'll say is this. Okay, so I remember liking the movies as a kid. I think prior to today, I'd seen maybe half of the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot movie, which we will be referring to mostly as Ghostbusters Answer the Call, because that's sort of what it's called now, question mark.
Yeah, it's got been retroactively retitled, but...
It's kind of like how the first Indiana Jones movie on DVD is called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, even though it's just called Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I will also interchangeably be using Girlbusters and Ghostbusters, but women.
Ghostbusters : they're women now.
Just Bill Murray in a wig.
So, and I hadn't seen Ghostbusters : Afterlife until today. I'd heard mixed things about it, I'll be honest. The trailers didn't really make me want to see it.
No, I was very much the same. I'm not like you. I've not been busting all day. I've been sort of sporadically busting over the last few days.
He busts at regular intervals throughout the week.
Yeah, I do. You've got to keep it in check and healthy.
Whereas I just bust when and whenever the mood takes me.
You're a human splash zone, you know that.
Dear. That's why they call me Slimer.
That was a Ghostbusters joke.
It was. And let me tell you, it made me feel good. Anyway, so also, I should also say, I have vague memories of the real Ghostbusters cartoon and Extreme Ghostbusters.
Yeah, same. But if you were to ask me any of the character names or any like plots of episodes, I wouldn't be able to tell you jack shit.
Wheelchair guy. There was a wheelchair guy in Extreme Ghostbusters.
Was there? I don't remember that.
and there was like a side. Yeah, because the real Ghostbusters cartoon is the characters from the movie,
Right.
and then the Extreme Ghostbusters is like the next generation. So like,
Yeah, I didn't even remember that.
so
That's
like
how little I remember.
Egon is in the Extreme Ghostbusters, but he's like fucking Giles and Buffy. He's just like the guy who's like, here's what you need to know about ancient Sumerian gods or whatever the fuck.
Oh, okay. He's that sort of like mentorish character.
Yeah, and Annie Potts is in it as well. I can't remember what her character's called.
Fair enough.
That's probably not actually her, but that character is also in Extreme Ghostbusters.
Janine.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've just seen all 4 movies and I still can't remember any character names.
Which is amazing when you consider they're all basically the same movie.
Yeah, well, we'll get into this.
Tipping my hat a little early on that one, but...
We will get into this. This is a franchise comprising of the same movie made 4 times, arguably.
And I would like to just say that is not inherently a bad thing, and I say this as somebody who pretty much loves every Friday the 13th movie, because they made the same movie 8 times, and I don't have a problem with that. So...
Okay, come on. Jason Takes Manhattan is very different to Jason X.
I mean, that's what I mean. Like, the first 8 Friday the 13th movies are just the same movie, and then the ones after that.
Then the following 30 are quite varied.
The one where Jason body hops and the one where he goes to space are definitely sort of tonal shifts.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably do the Jason movies at some point. If they release another Jason movie, then we might.
Yes, which there's talks of that. Somebody's acquired the rights.
Because we're shamelessly trend chasing.
Yeah, obviously.
Ghostbusters Afterlife came out like a couple of months ago.
And it's still in cinemas as well. I didn't realise that until...
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I was looking through my local Odeon listings and saw that they're still showing it, so...
Could have gone. Didn't. Watched it at home.
I saw this at a cinema.
I legally paid for this movie. I actually did. It was last night.
Okay, well, alright, my conscience is clear. First Ghostbusters.
So, yes, the first Ghostbusters movie, released in 1984, directed by Ivan Reitman, starring, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, Slimer in his first movie role.
Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Gozer. Watch that kid. That kid's going places. Annie Potts.
So back to Millie Bobby Brown playing Gozer again.
Yeah. There is no Millie Bobby Brown. Only Zool.
Yeah, so Zool is in this movie. So Zool is
we can't just name fucking weird chaos gods as being in movies now. They're part of the cast.
I mean, they're in multiple movies, so...
In a way, they are... Yeah, they are technically... Zool is technically the only character that appears in all 4 movies, right? Because I don't know if you stayed for the post-credits of Ghostbusters, but they're women now. But
no, I didn't, surprisingly.
See, this is the thing, you see, listeners. Mark is not... he's not doing his due diligence. I've watched the post-credit scenes for these films as well.
Wow, I didn't even know that Answer the Call had...
Beware the Call.
Beware the Call. It's Ghostbusters, but they're sirens now.
Dial G for Ghostbusters.
I'd watch that.
The postman only busts twice.
I'm pretty sure that's a real porn movie.
There's probably a Confessions of a Postman.
There isn't, actually. I've seen all 4 of those movies, and Postman's not on it.
If any franchise needs a reboot, it's the Confessions series.
Aidan and Marc versus the Confessions series. Let's do this.
That'll be the first Kino Inferno episode to have no listeners.
Yeah, because no one's fucking seen those movies other than me, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. No one's going to watch that shit. No one's going to watch them for Prepare either.
Honestly, I mean, yes. But no, you said Zool is in Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess. Sorry, I need to take this back. Zool is not in Ghostbusters 2, but Zool is in Ghostbusters Answer the Call, because in the post-credits scene, there's a bit where Patty is listening to some readings, and she's like, "Oh, you got to come up and listen to this. There's some real weird chatter. Who's Zool?" And then the music's
okay.
like, bum, 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 bum. Ghostbusters
So,
2, anyone?
Yeah, I'm assuming
and everyone's
that was probably
like,
the idea, yeah.
And, the whole audience went, I don't think so. That's how we ended up with Ghostbusters. It's them again. Which is what we'll be calling Ghostbusters Afterlife.
So...
Yes, the first one.
The first movie.
Let's nail down the essentials. This is the movie that's basically regarded as a classic by most people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a unique blend, really, of sci-fi, horror, comedy, erotic fiction.
And I'm assuming, I can't think of an example prior to it, but it must have been the first of its kind, really.
Yeah, I think it gets a lot of points for being fairly unique in what it's trying to do. There've definitely been comedies that revolve around, paranormal elements or horror elements in the past, but I think this is like with most horror, with most comedy horror, you end up with the scales very much in favour of either horror or comedy, right? So you either end up with a horror that's got some funny bits in it, or you end up with a comedy that's got some horror elements. Whereas I think Ghostbusters is the first one to really blend the tones fairly equally. And
be fairly action-packed as well. That's the other thing as well.
It works on a lot of levels.
And I can't think of a film that came before this that did the sort of balancing act that this film does and quite succeed in the same way, at least.
Yeah.
So, like you say, definitely scores points for that. So the original movie, you've got your four central characters who are played obviously by Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and his name escapes me.
Ernie Hudson,
that's it. And so at the beginning of the movie, Harold Ramis, Bill Murray, and Dan Aykroyd, they are researchers into the paranormal.
Yes, the movie says they are parapsychologists.
Parapsychologists.
Which in the real world is kind of a pseudoscience, but in this movie it basically seems to be any kind of paranormal research at all.
And of the three of them, the only one who is clearly not as interested in it as an absolute charlatan is Bill Murray's character.
Yeah, he's a real scumbag in this movie.
He really is, and I think that's just the way that Bill Murray plays him, I think.
Well, yeah, because when we first see Venkman, Bill Murray's character, he is doing an experiment. God knows what he told these participants, but with a young lad and a young lady, and he wants to have sex with the young lady, so he's pretending that she can I can't speak today, listeners. I've been busting too hard. So he's pretending that the lady's kind of ESP is off the charts, and she's getting all these picture cards right while looking at the back of them. And every time the guy says any answer, whether it's right or wrong, Bill Murray tells him it's wrong and shocks him with the little electroshocker. It's pretty fucking wild.
Yeah, I know as well this character was originally written for John Belushi, which makes sense, I think. But he died whilst Dan Aykroyd was writing the script for this movie.
Sure, yeah.
And I do think, sort of jumping ahead slightly in terms of what I think of this movie overall, I think it is a shame, obviously, that that part was written for Belushi and he couldn't do it. But Bill Murray kind of makes this movie, I think.
Yes, some slightly poorly aged moments aside.
Yeah,
I think he brings a certain kind of I don't know. He lends it some credulity, I think.
And his sort of improvisational skills definitely do shine through in a lot of bits, because Dan Aykroyd is kind of more playing the straight man for the most part.
Yes, yeah. And he co-wrote the script as well. I know Dan Aykroyd.
He did, yes.
It's impossible to talk about this franchise without mentioning that Dan Aykroyd is a crazy ghost person.
Stupidly into ghosts.
Yeah, he loves this shit. He knows, because we're going to talk about the lore of these movies, because I think we're both equally baffled by them.
Completely.
But, he crafted this fucking lore for these movies. All this bizarre Lovecraftian shit about these, ancient Sumerian gods and so forth, like Gozer and Azul and all these creatures, right? All in aid of making this movie. And you do kind of like Dan Aykroyd is, God love him, a wildly eccentric man who believes in all sorts of, I think it's fair to say, nonsense. Like, he's into crystal
some wild
skulls.
Shit, yeah.
He's into crystal skulls and like interdimensional beings and stuff like that. So the thing that's kind of interesting about the first Ghostbusters movie is it's kind of a conduit for all these things that he's actually interested in real life.
Yeah, it's like a big melting pot of ideas, and I think one thing that kind of struck me watching it was I was kind of amazed how much of a huge following this movie has. Obviously, it is a good movie, but the lore and the plot and the overall stuff that's going on with like the ghosts and ghosts and everything is completely fucking wild and kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
To the point where I finished the movie going, I'm not entirely sure I know exactly what was going on.
No. And
because when you reach the point where, you know, Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis turn into dogs, that's when I was like, okay, why did that happen?
Yeah, and this is very toned down from Aykroyd's original drafts. Because Ivan Reitman, who also had a hand in writing the script, well, one of the suggestions I could find when I was doing research that Reitman made was maybe the entire film should be set on Earth, which I think gives you a kind of He was definitely he was into some weird shit. Was old Dan Aykroyd, and he wanted to do this kind of like science fiction, interdimensional beings, and also ghost exterminators and all this kind of stuff. And I think Reitman's influence was to just basically cut out a lot of the more lore-heavy elements, which kind of is how you end up with this movie where stuff happens, and it seems like there's a reason for it, but I couldn't tell you why they turn into dogs, for example.
I think a perfect example is towards the beginning when we first properly meet Sigourney Weaver's character, Dana, where she goes back to her apartment and is immediately accosted by Rick Moranis doing just one of his best performances, if you ask me. He's great in this movie. But Dana goes back into her apartment and experiences her first haunting.
Yes.
Which goes from 0 to 1,000,000 in a fucking blink of an eye. It goes from her TV being switched on while she's out to her putting eggs on a counter that then start to explode and fry on the counter to opening her fridge and being presented with cosmic horror.
Yes.
There's no build-up to any of this. It just happens.
Sort of bizarre gateway opens to, I guess, Goza's dimension.
I guess later on in the movie they do kind of explain the significance of the apartment building that this takes place in. But
we should take note of that because it's very relevant to Ghostbusters : it's the old ones again.
Yes, it is.
Because I noted down I should say, listeners, I got about midway through Ghostbusters 2 and kind of stopped making notes and just white-knuckled it through the rest of them. But, yes, I did write down the name Ivo Shander and was like, I wonder if that'll play into... Just on a hunch, I didn't know. I was like, I wonder if that'll play into any of the other Ghostbusters. Like, will they reference it in Answer the Call, or will they reference it in Afterlife? And they do reference it in Afterlife, because he seems to be the cause of all the paranormal strife in the world. This mysterious occultist who apparently also built an apartment building at some stage in his life.
We should also say, listeners, that because we're going to be talking about all 4 movies, you're going to get spoilers. So I imagine if you're listening to this, you've more than likely seen the first
spoilers for Ghostbusters.
Well, Ghostbusters Afterlife, at least, because that has already just come out.
I was holding out to watch Ghostbusters. Come on, everyone who's ever seen a film has seen Ghostbusters. Come on.
Yes, but I'm saying Afterlife. Like, that's only just come out. And even though I know that quite a lot of people don't really care about it.
Yes. I feel like the people who care about spoilers have seen it by now.
Yeah, if you love Ghostbusters enough, you've seen Afterlife. Because I
guess if you've not seen Afterlife, I guess you're not a real Ghostbusters fan.
Yeah.
So.
Fake fan. Get out.
I bet Bustin doesn't even make you feel good. I bet you feel a sense of shame after Bustin.
Like any good Catholic boy show.
Oh, God.
Every time I think you've ran that joke into the ground, you just dig it straight back up.
I find new angles from which to burst.
It's coming at me.
Bustin at you, please. It's a family show. I mean, I assume we don't have to explain this, but there is a hilarious ad-lib in the Ray Parker Jr. song where he goes, "Bustin' makes me feel good," which, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows that, right?
Yeah, you weren't just talking about wanking. I'd like to just make that clear now.
It's a double entendre.
It is.
It's kind of a single entendre, really, but it's...
Yeah, there's no subtlety or... Like,
it's half of an entendre.
He's just telling you how much he loves to just spaff everywhere.
I think we might get kids listening to this, because kids like Ghostbusters.
I mean, I hope not, because we've just spent the last minute talking about spaff and wanking, so...
I mean, to be fair, in this first movie, there is the notorious ghost blowjob scene, which is another scene
that's very true, actually.
I want to flag that up as why the hell did that happen? Because it's just, I remembered the scene and I was like, oh, there must have been some reason that, again, because I had not seen this film for a while now. I remembered that scene very clearly and I was like, I wonder, why did that happen again? Like, there must have been some, because I remembered that when Dana became Zool, she was all seductive. So I was like, okay, I wonder if there's like some kind of ghost seduction thing in that scene. Nope, it's just in the middle of a montage of them doing some standard busting. And then
it's Dan Aykroyd that gets the ghost nosh, isn't it?
He gets the ghost nosh.
Which, you know, let's face it, given what we know about Dan Aykroyd...
Given he loves a ghost,
yeah,
maybe he's just...
Yeah, I feel like there's something a little bit more unsavoury about that scene than I initially thought.
Because you think it's his real fantasy to be noshed off by a ghost?
I think he wants a ghost goblin, yeah, that's the sort of thing he wants.
Well, sorry if there are any children listening. But,
if there are any children listening, where are your parents?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Probably too busy busting. Anyway. Anyway. Yeah, so Ghostbusters 1. Look, you know the drill. They get together, the three lads.
They start busting ghosts.
They start busting ghosts as a profession. They hire Annie Potts to be their secretary.
Janine, who's one of my favourites. Well, this is what I'd actually say. As much as I like the main cast of characters, I actually think the secondary characters are a lot funnier and a lot more interesting.
Yes. I'd agree with that. We should let's go through the central characters. So we've got Bill Murray as Peter Venkman. We've said he's kind of the sleazy sort of does it for the cash and the girls kind of guy.
He's sleazy but charming in a way, I think. And
he's ultimately got a heart of gold as well. He's not. I mean, he's a bit of a wrong-un, but he's...
Yeah, in the modern context, yes. But I think Bill Murray's great in the part, and his chemistry with Sigourney Weaver is great. Like, they work really well together.
I agree. So we've got that. We've got Harold Ramis as a Spengler, Egon Spengler, who's your nerdy...
He's your brains of the operation, really.
Yeah. He's kind of the tech guy. It's not as pronounced as in Answer the Call, where they have, like, the obvious gadget maker girl.
Yeah, that's, like, her entire personality.
Yeah. But he's definitely the guy who, he's, like, the hard science kind of guy.
Yeah.
Well, like, you have the famous scene with the Twinkie and everything, where he's explaining about, like, the energy build-up and stuff like that. And then we have Dan Aykroyd as Ray. Mm-hmm. Last name withheld, because I've forgotten it. I've got it up here. Ray, he's like Ray Stoltz or something, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah. And
Bustin,
Ray is obviously
Bustin,
the one
Bustin.
that he's the one that's got the most sort of.
Sorry, Ray Stantz. Ray Stantz.
Stantz. There we go. Yeah, Ray's whole thing is that he's the one that obviously like believes in ghosts. He's the one who wants to capture them on film and such. So like he's very much your believer.
Yeah, he's kind of like the heart of the operation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And also, this movie is proof that Dan Aykroyd is the king of cigarette hanging off your lip acting, because he does that several times throughout this movie.
There is a lot of smoking in this movie.
Yeah, but he is just the king of just doing a turn to camera with a cigarette just dangling off of his lip.
Yeah, he does that a lot.
It's always great. I always loved it.
We have obviously Ernie Hudson as Winston Zeddemore,
who sadly doesn't get nearly enough to do.
No, he's introduced quite late into the first movie.
Yeah,
he just kind of rocks up.
Yeah, apparently that was a rewrites thing. He was supposedly supposed to come into the movie a lot earlier, and then by the time he accepted the part, I might be getting this slightly wrong. I only watched a bit of the.
No, I think you're right, because I do know that the role was originally intended to be played by Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, it was originally supposed to be Aykroyd, Belushi, and Eddie Murphy that would play the three central characters. Which
I think, if you'd had Eddie Murphy, and especially in 1984, he would have been a bigger selling point for the movie as a whole.
Yeah, and I feel like that would definitely cement the fact that it's not massively a film for kids.
No, yeah. Yeah. If it was 1984 Eddie Murphy. Yeah, not so much. So we also have Sigourney Weaver as Dana, who's our main client in the movie, and Bill Murray's character's love interest.
Yep.
She gets possessed by Zool.
Yes. Is it Zool that possesses her?
Yes, because she famously says,
Oh, yeah.
there
There
is no Dana, there is only Zool.
That's very silly of me. That's like one of the most iconic lines from the movie. So
there is no Spaff, there is only Bustin. We also have Rick Moranis as Lewis Tully.
I believe.
Who is the neighbour of Dana, and it's a Rick Moranis character. That's all we really need to say. It's playing the character who plays in everything. He's kind of a loser.
Yeah, only in this movie, it's kind of a tour de force Rick Moranis performance. Especially at that first scene where Dana is walking into the apartment building and he just comes out of his apartment and just bombards her with just bullshit, basically. He's just talking her ear off constantly. And I was watching it just kind of in awe of Rick Moranis just being able to just constantly just spout out this drivel.
Yes, and he ends up getting possessed by the Keymaster.
Yeah, that's where I started to get confused.
Sumerian demon creature spirit.
So there has to be two demons, the Gatekeeper and the Keymaster.
Yes.
For Gozer to be released.
Yeah, so they have to fuck. This is explicitly the thing.
Because as if like the euphemism of Keymaster and
Gatekeeper, Keymaster, yeah.
Literally, that's dick in badge. Like.
Dick in pussy, yeah.
Yeah, that's like.
Or dick in arsehole. Let's not judge.
But in this instance, it's Sigourney Weaver vag, so that's
you never know. You never know.
That's the key to the portal to hell, as it were.
She may prefer the tradesman's entrance.
I don't know if Goes as an anal kind of deity, but we don't know enough about it.
Sumerian demons get up to all sorts.
This is very true.
Anyway, so yes, the lore is quite baffling, really, but because I didn't even understand that them busting together is what brought Gozer forth in the first place until I saw Afterlife, and they make it very clear in that movie that the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper have to do some busting. I know that that's what they were going to do in the original movie, but I didn't realise that was part of it. I thought they were just like, we're physical now, so let's get down to some heavy busting.
And then they bust, and then they turn into dogs.
Yeah, they turn into dog beasts, like hellhounds.
So they've been busting all over town, and then Zool possesses Dana, and Lewis is possessed by nondescript demon.
The Keymaster.
The Keymaster. But like, Zool is the gatekeeper.
The little Japanese fella from The Matrix Reloaded.
But that's what I mean. Like, Zool is the gatekeeper, right?
Yes.
So why don't we know the Keymaster's name?
Well, let's find out. Maybe we do.
Maybe we do. Maybe we just
let's
didn't
consult
pay
the Ghostbusters wiki in real time.
We were too busy busting, mate. That's what it was.
Too busy busting all over the place.
We saw Sigourney Weaver getting all sultry in this movie, and just things occurred.
And busting started to make us feel good. Let's have a look. The Keymaster. You're listening to me using the Ghostbusters wiki in real time. I've just typed in the Catmaster. That's not right. Somebody else.
Catmaster?
No, the Catmaster.
The Catmaster? I think I met him at a festival once.
I didn't know.
We all met the Catmaster.
We've all danced with the Catmaster, boy. There we go, the Keymaster Ghostbusters. Oh, we do. His name is Vince Clortho. They do say Vince in the movie a couple of times.
I don't remember that, but okay, at least we know that.
Yeah, Vince Clortho, known as the Keymaster.
Well, I mean, we don't need to get too bogged down in the plot, even though I'm still somewhat baffled by the lore, because again, you've seen Ghostbusters, like, you know what it's about, you know what's going on.
Yeah, it's...
But I do just want to reiterate that it is amazing to me that this movie is as popular as it is, considering that the plot is kind of garbled and a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
And it is a strange little kind of melting pot of ideas, I think. You kind of got all this insane like lore and stuff that's going on, and then you've also got the sort of improv comedy stuff going on from its like main cast of characters.
It's also unclear what they mean by ghost in this movie, because some of the ghosts, like the library ghost at the start of the film, I'd say is fairly standard. That's a dead person who's become a ghost.
And then they kind of go a little bit Beetlejuice.
Yeah, whereas the ghosts later on in the movie are Lovecraftian entities from another dimension.
And that continues on throughout all of the movies as well.
Yeah, it's a very strange melt, because the whole thing with Ivo Shandor is that he's like a weird Lovecraftian figure who's he's part of the cult of Gozer or whatever. And this is something that becomes big in the lore of Ghostbusters, because I also read that in the Ghostbusters game, I can't remember when that came out, but the PS whichever edition game.
PS3. It came on PS3, yeah.
Oh, the PS3 game, which was kind of like an unofficial Ghostbusters 3 at the time.
Yeah.
Because I think it had the old guys doing the voice acting and everything.
Yeah, I have played that game, actually. Not for a long time, but it is good. It's actually quite good.
Yeah, so I think I'm right in saying then that the Ivo Shandor plays a role in that, and it's also revealed that he's part of the reason that events of Ghostbusters 2 occurred. So he's like the overarching villain, I suppose, in the shadows. Okay.
Well, it's good that that's there, but there's not enough of that to really grasp onto.
Yeah, because even when they get to it in Afterlife, which we'll cover later, it is kind of like, oh, you're just sort of saying the name of a thing from the old movies. I mean, you do see Ivo Shandor in Afterlife, played by J.K. Simmons for a second.
Yeah, weird that they got him to do that. And
I imagine there's something that's been cut out there, but...
Yeah, obviously we should get onto Ghostbusters 2 soon, because we're not going to dwell too long on each movie.
Yeah, okay, so point is this. I think in terms of Ghostbusters 1, we're both fairly agreed, uncontroversially, that it's a decent movie. It's entertaining.
Oh, yeah, it is. Absolutely. Like, I would definitely watch it again. Like,
yeah, we almost certainly will, because it's the kind of film that people find agreeable to put on. You'll end up watching it again at some point.
Yeah, if I was like flicking through channels and Ghostbusters was on, I'd be like, yeah, I'll watch Ghostbusters. Yeah. Why not? Like, it is good. It's good. I did like it, and especially considering that I hadn't seen it for so long as well.
Yeah.
There is one thing. One thing that does kind of stand out, and I kind of get why it's in the original, and it's weird that it's become more of a trope in the following movies. The product placement is a bit egregious.
Yes.
I think. Yeah. And I get in the first movie that was probably because that's how they got it funded. Because it wasn't a cheap movie to make, let's face it.
When you say product placement, what are you specifically referring to?
As in, like, there's a part where when Dana first walks into the Ghostbusters headquarters, and there's very clearly a Diet Coke can facing the camera.
Sure, yeah.
There's several of those throughout the movie, and then there is also in Ghostbusters 2, and in Ghostbusters Afterlife, at first I was like, oh, is that supposed to just be a reference to the fact that the first movie had it? But, an entire scene of that movie takes place in Walmart showing their low prices. So,
yeah, that is true. That is true. It's not quite as egregious as the Power Rangers movie, where part of the plot revolved around Krispy Kreme donuts, was it? Or Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah, it also reminded me of, which funnily enough is definitely a movie that was directly inspired by Ghostbusters, Evolution, the David Duchovny movie, where they literally defeat the aliens at the end by using Head and Shoulders.
Yeah.
They even go so far as to have one of the characters mention how shiny and flake-free their hair is.
We love product placement.
We do, but I just found that was like a weird part of these movies, and a recurrent part as well. That was
I mean, it's one of those things where if you look for it, it's in most Hollywood movies.
Yeah, it stood out to me a lot in that one.
Yeah,
but going back to really like Ghostbusters, it's a pretty great movie. I think that's that kind of goes without saying, really.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's one of those movies where, even though there's a lot of scenes that people know and a lot of lines that people know, I don't think it gets too repetitive to watch, sort of thing. Like if you watch, say, I don't know, Monty Python and the Holy Grail or something, like, some of the enjoyment is a little diminished because you've heard those lines repeated ad nauseum. People quote it and people reference it all the time, to the point where, for some new viewers of that particular movie, when you sit down and watch it, you're like, oh, like the most of the enjoyment is just, oh, so that's where that comes from. That's what
Yeah,
that reference
whereas
comes
I'd
from.
say even the most iconic stuff from Ghostbusters is not overdone in the movie itself. Like the whole, like everyone tends to think like the bit at the end with the giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but he's on screen for like a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
If that, it's not this huge thing that like a lot of people seem to make it out to be.
Yeah, it's memorable, but it's it's a very brief part of the end. Yeah, because it's where I'm sure people know the scene, but it's where they're demanded to choose the form that Gozer will take as he destroys the world. So they try to empty their heads, and the first thing that pops into Ray's head is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So a kaiju-sized Stay Puft Marshmallow Man shows up.
Yeah, and I think like there's so many things about this movie that make me go, oh, it's 5 stars off the bat. I mean, like its cast makes it like an 18-star movie anyway. Rick Moranis and Sigourney Weaver turn into dogs.
Yeah,
5 stars. There is a giant kaiju marshmallow man. 5 stars.
I think it's just a tight
movie.
script as well. I mean, it's clearly a script that the cast are having some fun with at various scenes. There's some clear ad-libbing, I'd say, but I think it has this, and we'll get into this when we compare it to certain later installments, but it definitely has this element of like, yeah, there's clearly improv going on, and like the cast are clearly bringing their own personalities to the roles. Like Bill Murray is playing a Bill Murray character, you know what I mean? Like it's all kind of like that, but
it's almost in some ways the definitive Bill Murray role, isn't it? It's very similar to his characters in things like Groundhog Day and stuff like that.
Yeah, but this is it. I think what they have here that a lot of American comedies don't have these days is they have a solid script underneath it that they're improvising around. Because I feel like when you watch a lot of, say, like Judd Apatow movies, for example, they're kind of formed around improv rather than the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. Like they have. It feels like they have the skeleton of a script and they have their actors fill in the blanks.
Yeah, rather than having a really solid script that you can fall back on.
Yeah, which can work. I mean, obviously, look at like the films of Christopher Guest, for example. That's what they did.
Yeah, but that's constructed from the ground up as a kind of improv exercise.
Yeah, and those characters, like the actors like Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, they completely create their characters.
Yeah. Because I feel like if you compare it to something like Knocked Up or something, it's not the same.
Yeah,
I know that's not that's not a terrible movie by any stretch. But
no, it's definitely in the sort of upper echelon of Judd Apatow movies.
It's just something that's not personally to my taste necessarily. That thing.
I would agree, and I think we can both agree that a certain film that we're going to have to talk about later is very guilty of that.
Dune 2021. No, it's just right. So that's Ghostbusters 1. So we are employing a ranking system at the end of all these movies. It's not our usual Kino or Inferno thing. It's going to be different. So the rankings that we have today, we have good, which is fairly uncomplicated. Just means the movie's good. We have shit, which again, I think you can understand what that is, an unqualified piece of shit. But then we have some more interesting categories. We have shit, but I love it, which I think speaks for itself. We know the movie's bad, but we kind of like it. Or good, but I hate it, which is a more niche one. But there's definitely a few movies I can think of that are good, but I hate it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, Mark, what do you think? Ghostbusters 1?
Good. It's got to be.
Oh, I was hoping you'd do even more dramatic pause there. Get a drum roll in.
I mean, you edit this. There we go. It's good.
Yeah, I also... Oh, wait, no, hang on. Let's make it more suspenseful. Good, you say, Mark. Well, I think it was good also.
Shocking nobody.
Yeah, fucking controversial hot takes as always. Hashtag the spicy boys. Ghostbusters, the 1984 movie that everyone likes, is good.
Yeah, I can't even be facetious and be like, oh, but no, because it's just good. It's just good. Like,
yeah. So, we've kind of given an overview of Ghostbusters 1984 there. I think before we move on, I just want to kind of quiz you, kind of pick your brains on something. We've both kind of said this movie's pretty good. It's a solid 5 out of 5 or what have you. What do you think it is about this movie in particular that has attracted such a fandom over the years?
Do you know what? I've been thinking about this, and I find it hard to pinpoint one thing in particular because, like I said previously, it's such a strange movie. The cast, the tone of it. I think it's because there's so much about it that's very memorable. I think that's the other thing as well.
Yeah.
So much of the imagery and like iconography of it is really quite memorable. Like the proton packs are really cool. The ghost designs are really interesting. Well, ghosts.
The entities.
We
don't agree that they're ghosts necessarily.
They're demons. They are demonic entities.
Well, that's the opinion of Kino Inferno.
Yeah, they're demons. I think there's just
because to be fair, hang on, before you get onto this, what was Slimer then before he died? Because this is the thing, they say it's a ghost.
No, he was supposed to be John Belushi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. They actually said that Slimer was supposed to look like John Belushi.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that's actually true. So
Fair
in
enough.
my headcanon, Slimer is John Belushi.
Fair enough. Well, I stand corrected. But yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, I think there's just so many elements. I think people like the characters, particularly like Bill Murray's character. I think they enjoy the proton packs and like all the ghost busting stuff. I think, there's just so much about this movie that's really it just stands out and is really memorable. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good dialogue as well, memorable lines and stuff. It is one of those films that it'll always puzzle me how it attracted like such a dedicated fan base, especially prior to like Ghostbusters 2016 and Afterlife coming out, where essentially you had one film that was universally loved and one film that was not so much. Mm-hmm. It seems weird that there's such a fandom around it, but there is, like, especially in America. If you go to any kind of Comic-Con or whatever, there will be people dressed up as Ghostbusters. It is a real phenomenon over there. And I think, presumably it's also just one of those things that, like, for the sort of age that, like, you and I are, Ghostbusters was already a classic when we got around to seeing it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Whereas I imagine seeing this when it first came out would have been kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it would have been...
There would have been nothing else like this.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe it's just the pure staying power of that. It's like the first wave of fans who saw it were like, there's nothing else like it, and became obsessed with it. And then, by the time newer generations came to it, it was already a cult classic, and, it was already this thing that people are obsessed over. Which brings me to Ghostbusters 2, because I want to make a point here which I think is interesting, in that Ghostbusters 2 and Ghostbusters Afterlife weirdly kind of start in the same place, where they're like, no one remembers ghosts, or if they do, it's as a distant thing, and crucially, nobody cares about the Ghostbusters. Is the crucial element.
Because at the start of Ghostbusters 2, something that stood out to me that I was sad didn't go any further, is that at the beginning it feels like they're just rehashing the first movie, because it starts in the same way. A supernatural event occurs, which in this case is Dana's newborn baby. It's Pram gets possessed and zips around the streets of New York. Which is ridiculous. And not a patch on the opening library bit from the original movie, in my opinion. No. It's a bit too Baby's Day Out for my taste. Yeah,
that baby is a real problem in this movie. Because they basically use it as a way to make Bill Murray's character like, hey, he's not so bad.
Yeah.
Look, he's bonding with the baby.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not a scumbag. Yeah, look how cute he is with the baby.
Well, that's the thing. They soften a lot of that character's edges, but that's kind of what Ghostbusters 2 does generally. It softens the edges on everything. It's compared to the first movie, it's a lot more family-friendly, a lot cleaner, I think.
Well, you can tell by the attitude to Slimer in this movie. By the time that this movie came out, Slimer was kind of like the kid's favourite character, because he's like the anarchic little... Yeah. Well, he doesn't even get named Slimer until the real Ghostbusters cartoon.
That doesn't surprise me, to be honest.
Yeah, he's just a big fat green creature in the original. Then, because he's like in the cartoon, he's like a sidekick who hangs out with the Ghostbusters.
Yes, he is, isn't he?
I think that's the same in Extreme Ghostbusters as well.
I only know that because as a kid I had a toy of Slimer. He was like the only character that I really knew.
So by then there was already cross-media appeal by the time they made, Ghostbusters 2, which is 5 years after the original, which I saw being cited as one of the reasons it failed, which I think is really interesting given our modern culture where we can't let a film go, even if it was released 40 years ago, we can't let it go unsequelized.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's always somewhat been a thing. I mean, look at Return to Oz. That came out something like 46 years after the original or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
But it's even worse these days. You know, movies are just getting constantly just getting sequels, and I'll put it this way: I'm gonna sort of shoot my load early a little bit on this one.
You're gonna bust early.
I'm gonna bust early. Yeah,
I'm passionate.
I don't really like Ghostbusters 2.
No, I don't. It was the one that I was finding most hard to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Just briefly, the plot is a different ancient deity. Well, sort of a warrior king who ascended to godhood, I think is what they say.
Yes.
Vigo the Carpathian, who's the only element I remembered about this film prior to watching it again, turns up and he's like, hey, I want to possess Dana's baby so that I can grow into manhood and dominate the world again? ?
Via slime.
Yeah, via slime. Yeah.
That happens. That's a part of the plot.
Pink Jankum.
Pink Jack. Busted all over the street.
But the negative Jankum is the bad Jankum, and the positive Jankum is the good Jankum.
Yeah, and it's all...
It's all about how you bust.
Yeah, it's all about how you bust. If you bust angrily, you're gonna get negative Jankum all upon you. But if you
a negative bust is a bad bust.
It is. No one likes a disappointing wank. Anyway.
Okay, just dispensing with the entendre altogether.
I think we've ran it to the ground at this point. Let's just be honest. We're just talking about cum.
Okay, sure.
But no. Essentially, Ghostbusters 2 has the same plot as the first movie.
Yeah, because it's even the same lady in peril. It's fucking Dana's
same lady
baby.
in peril, yeah. And what I wanted to say was, I thought that after that initial scene where baby in danger and Sigourney Weaver falls over a bit, we then go to this bit where two of our Ghostbusters go to a children's party.
Yes.
And you find out that they're essentially washed up and nobody wants the Ghostbusters around anymore. But then they try and get all the kids to dance to the Ghostbusters
right,
song.
Yeah, and it's like, why does the Ghostbusters song exist in this universe?
Yeah. And so, like, if... I don't want to overthink that, because that will take me down a whole rabbit hole of wondering how this
we're going to have to reassess our opinions on this when we get to Ghostbusters : but there's women in it, because that adds another layer to, does the song exist in reality or not?
Yes,
we'll get to that in a moment. Yes,
so
it's very weird, and there is some meta commentary, I feel like, in that scene where they're like, oh, it's 5 years on, and the kids don't want Ghostbusters anymore; they want bloody He-Man.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of... I was like, oh, is this going to kind of go in the direction like when we spoke about Jurassic Park 3, where that is an entire movie about Sam Neill not wanting to be in... be in Jurassic Park. And I was like, okay, is this a movie that's kind of talking about the fact that we don't need a second Ghostbusters movie?
Oh
and it's not.
This is directed by Lana Wachowski over here.
But... yeah, I thought, okay, so... And the use of the actual Ghostbusters song in the scene itself kind of made me think that, and then the rest of the movie just doesn't, or at least the rest of the movie proves that we definitely didn't need a sequel to Ghostbusters, because it ultimately doesn't really add anything.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird plot element. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't really go anywhere, where they're just like, nobody likes the Ghostbusters anymore. Oh, but they will by the end of this, so it's fine. Which then raises more questions when we get to future installments, but we'll get there when we get there. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we're not going to have a whole lot to discuss around Ghostbusters 2, to be honest.
No, I'm already bored of talking about it.
Yeah, it's mostly the same plot. They hit so many of the same beats. I mean, they even go so far as having Stay Puft Marshmallow, part 2, which is just they animate the Statue of Liberty.
Yes.
To walk down the street to inspire New Yorkers to become patriotic and happy, and they use the power of American patriotism to win in the end, I think. Is that what I'm supposed to be taking from that?
They want the positive. Listen, it's perfectly simple. They want the pink Jankum to be positively charged. So in order to do that, they animate the Statue of Liberty through means that I'm not entirely sure of.
They use good Jankum. That's what they do.
So they've got some good Jankum, and they use that to animate the Statue of Liberty to create even more powerful Jankum.
to allow them to bypass the negative jankum that's encasing the museum that Sigourney Weaver's character's in.
We've said jankum like 100 times.
Where
on
they're
the
going to kill her
Ghostbusters
baby.
Oh, God. We'll never be monetized.
You say it was going to be freeform, okay?
No one's ever going to sponsor this show. Oh, God. Well, maybe. Well, Adam and Eve Sex Toys used to sponsor podcasts. Maybe we can get in on that.
Yo, Love Honey, where you at?
Imagine hearing Mark do an ad read for Love Honey. It'd be beautiful.
Do you like
to come good? Well, have we got the thing for you? It's called a cock ring.
It will make you come like a drain.
Good Lord.
Did I not tell you I once applied for a job to do copywriting for a sex toy website?
We haven't the time. So, Ghostbusters 2. I'm not biting the listeners, I'm not.
If you'd like to know more, send £1 to this address.
Oh my God.
This is how we get sponsorship. I tell filthy stories from my past.
If you want to get filthy with Mark Smith over the phone,
go to your nearest phone box to find out more.
Alright, it's me, Mark.
Anyway, enough about jankums and cum. Ghostbusters 2.
I was going to say that the Mark phone line would just be you going, you got to give me twos on that. Smoking beef here.
Yeah, Ghostbusters 2. There's more Bustin.
Yeah, there really is. And there's some business where Rick Moranis and Annie Potts start shagging at one point.
They do. Janine's hair in this movie is very distracting. I want to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, I don't know why they gave her such a different look.
Like, she's got this really hideous ginger wig thing going on, and it looks awful. Like, it's so distracting.
It's kind of weird what they do with her character in general, because in the first movie, she's a fairly well-rounded character for a supporting role. And also, like, they do play off the fact that she's attracted to Spengler, which is continued in the Extreme Ghostbusters. There's some drama around that, but I don't remember much about Extreme Ghostbusters, but that's one element I remember.
Apart from the horny bits, yeah.
Well, it's a very sexy show. No, but I seem to remember there being some inference in that show that, like, they dated for a while after the movies, or after the timeline of the movies, and then had an acrimonious split, I think. I might be wrong about that. Don't complain about it in the comments. This is where we get Adam Ragg in the comments being like, actually, in Extreme Ghostbusters, I think you'll find there's a 5-episode that blah, 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 blah. But we love you for it. Correct us all the time. Anyway, yes, I think it's weird what they do with Janine's character, because, yeah, in the first one, she's kind of mouthy, a bit sarcastic, kind of in love with Spengler, or at least desires him. And then in this one, it's just like, she just starts banging Rick Moranis? ? Has weird wig? ?
Yeah, like, she's clearly gone through something in the 5 years.
Because there's even a bit where, when he puts on the uniform, this is Rick Moranis, he's wearing Spengler's uniform.
Yeah.
And she has a line about, like, oh, you look good in that. I was like, oh, they're trying to do a thing where she's trying to turn him into Spengler?
Because Spengler clearly rejected her, and now she's got this whole wig thing going.
As we know from Ghostbusters, it's them again. Spengler was married to the job.
That's very true.
But also, he did put it about a bit. Clearly.
Otherwise we wouldn't have that movie.
Clearly that Twinkie got busted all over town. This is possibly our filthiest episode.
Take a shot every time we say Bustin.
Or Jankum, quite frankly. Yeah, so that's Ghostbusters 2. Not much to write home about.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, we could sort of delve deeper into it, but
there's just really nothing to it, really. Like,
yeah, it's just more of the same, really.
Because it is more of the same. Because they even go through the typical sequel thing of, like, so Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver have split up after the events of... They were dated for a bit, but they've split up. So then their subplot in this movie is they get back together.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, sure. Why can't movies just have it be that people get together and then in the next movie they're together? Why does there always have to be drama?
Or if they separate, they stay separated.
Yeah, like in the Jurassic Park movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, better example of a sequel kind of doing the same thing, but not.
Yeah. That movie even has him buddying up to the kid like he does in this movie, but it's not a ploy to bed the mother necessarily.
Well, that we know of. We don't know what he was thinking about.
Well, we don't know what Sam Neill's up to in the jungle.
I don't think I want to know, to be honest. I'm quite frightened by that prospect.
His secrets die with him. I don't know what that means. Sam Neill, at time of recording, is alive and well.
But like, even
we're coming for him. That's the thing.
But even the style of this movie is basically the first movie. Like, they both start in the same way. They both have the end credits play the theme song whilst the action is still going.
Yes.
And like, honestly, I feel like you could possibly just play scenes from this movie, or you could paste scenes from this movie into the first movie.
Well, I was saying this when I watched them today. I was saying that some of the scenes that I remembered as being in the first one are in the second one.
And stylistically, it's very much the same. It's shot in very much the same way. The tone is mostly the same. It's a bit more sort of sanitized. It kind of doesn't have like the sort of cynicism of the first movie, I think.
Yeah, not quite. You definitely see that with Venkman being so like toned down, and his main like bits of humor are like, I'm bonding with a baby in an unconventional way. And it's kind of like
clearly Bill Murray's having a bit of fun with that like shtick, I guess. But Sigourney Weaver's doing her thing, and she's always a joy. But I feel like she kind of has less to do in this movie.
Yeah, I mean she's kind of woefully underused in both, arguably.
Yeah, and also Winston gets sidelined just as much as he does in the first movie.
Yeah, well, this is a problem that both these movies have. Is Winston is kind of a bit of a non-entity in both. As much as Ernie Hudson's performance is great.
Yeah, his character doesn't really do or add much to it, really.
I think the problem with it is they set up his character in the first movie as being like, he has the line about if you pay me well enough, I'll believe in anything. Like he's kind of the working stiff amongst the gang. And they sort of don't really know what to do with that character in the second one. Because I think that's one of the characters where I think the joke can just be he is still just kind of a working stiff, in spite of everything he's seen. Kind of like the comic book version of Hellboy, where one of the main jokes is like, Hellboy's this fucking demon who fights interdimensional beasties and what have you. But his attitude towards it is very much like, I punch the clock, I do my job, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think they could have gotten some decent mileage out of that, but they don't really do that. They kind of have him just being another Ray, really, like a fairly wide-eyed sort of like, oh, we've got to save the day and inspire New York and what have you.
I think one of the only sort of saving graces of this movie for me is that it sometimes falls into these little scenes where it turns into the core cast of actors almost doing shtick.
Yes.
Which feels like kind of remnants from their sort of like, sort of comedy era prior to this. So like for me, the bit where they're drilling a hole in the street and then the police ask them what they're doing, so Bill Murray takes on this kind of like foreman persona and they just start sort of riffing with each other. Like that stuff's good, but it just belongs in a better movie, I think.
Yeah, it's well, let's get to the rating system for Ghostbusters 2, because I don't think we've got much to say about it beyond that. So what are we saying? Are we saying good but I hate it, shit but I like it?
Well, for me, it's shit.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give it a shit. I can't really justify giving it a good. Can't really justify giving it a good, but I hate it either. It's kind of... It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, don't get me wrong. I'd probably watch it if it was on TV and I happened to be flicking through.
Yeah, this is the thing. I can understand why some parts of Ghostbusters fandom do like this movie, because it is kind of giving you more of the same. But for me, there's not anything about it that really makes it stand out.
It's not delivered with the same panache as the first movie.
No, and even the character whose name escapes me.
Is it Zool?
No. No, who's played by Peter Manacle's character.
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean.
So I might have to redo that so I actually know who he is.
No. Your ignorance must be recorded.
Where are we going?
Are you thinking of Gozer?
No.
I'm leaving all this in, by the way.
Janos?
Yeah, you want about the museum curator?
Yeah.
Or whatever he is. Yeah.
Yeah. Who basically fills the role that Rick Moranis' character.
Yeah, because he's chirps in Sigourney Weaver,
and then he gets possessed, and he's under the thumb of the
he's kind of like the Renfield type character.
Yeah, and because Rick Moranis' character just becomes an honorary Ghostbuster towards the end.
But kind of also does nothing.
Yeah. He's just kind of in it because they were like, oh, he was in the last movie.
Yeah. I mean, he's their attorney now, I think they say.
Yeah, he was an accountant in the first movie.
Yeah, and then, they kind of strong arm him into representing them in court in this one. So it's more of the same. If you enjoy the cast, you'll probably enjoy it, but I'm going to have to give it a shit. But anyway,
it's a shit.
Let's move on to the much more spicy entries. Because Ghostbusters, uncontroversial, good movie. Ghostbusters 2, most people agree, a subpar sequel. Ghostbusters 2016, known in some quarters as Answer the Call, as we sometimes call it in our message about this podcast. I was going to say group message, but it's a group of two. In our chat about this podcast, we call it Girlbusters. Or sometimes when we're feeling fruity, Girlbusters : or the Ghostbusters : there's women in it now. Now, we are being flippant about that fact, and I think we should point out that, like, this movie, the fact that they're women is kind of incidental to the movie. So when we're making jokes about that, we're making jokes more about the debate that surrounded this movie. I say debate. The venom that was spewed at this movie, the bile. Yeah.
Which it's really not worthy of in any way, shape, or form.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, it's
the fact that the core cast of women in this movie really. The fact that the 4 main cast members of this movie are female really has no significant bearing on the plot.
Yeah, not really. It's kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say they really tried to play up that element in marketing.
Yeah.
And I think that was a mistake. Well, evidently.
And in the movie, it's just more. Well, I'm trying to find the best way to put this.
You can do this, Mark. You can say words.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that this movie got so much shit because they were like, oh, it's this females are ruining Ghostbusters thing. I'm so like, it's
females.
It just doesn't hold any water with me because I'm like, right, they've done a reboot of Ghostbusters where in the original movie all the Ghostbusters were men. Why can't they be women?
Yeah, and they are playing different characters. We should say this movie is a continuity reboot, a parallel universe, I suppose, because they're not playing like Venkman, Spengler, Ray, and all that. Like, they're playing their own characters.
Somewhat similar characters.
Yes. So we should say the cast. So the cast for this. Oh my god! Let me get the character names up. Mark, fill some time for a second. Talk about Ghostbusters. There's women in it now.
Also, the other thing that's worth pointing out is that this movie was directed by Paul Feig, and obviously prior to this, the main things that I knew him from, he created Freaks and Geeks, which is a great show, which I'm a big fan of, and he also did Bridesmaids, which is one of my favourite modern comedy movies. Didn't expect to really like Bridesmaids, not obviously because female comedy, but like I remember just
Mark didn't know that women could be funny.
I remember just being told about it, and I was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound that good." And then I saw all the reviews for it, and then a friend of ours, should I say, sat us down to watch it, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, no, I like Bridesmaids. Paul Feig is an interesting character in all this. He certainly was not shy about going on about how he felt that the fans were being kind of man-children about the movie and making a big statement about, they just can't handle that there's women in it and all this kind of stuff. Which is partially true, because if you look at some of the responses to it, that's definitely a thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, piss baby's going to be piss babies.
Yeah, I think this is kind of unfortunate. I think they handled it quite badly. I think from their side of it, they should have just ignored all that controversy, really.
Yeah, they fought fire with fire a little bit too much.
And it got to a point where Leslie Jones had to leave Twitter because she was beefing with all these guys and it got really intense. And it's just this thing of like, and like, trust, I don't condone that behaviour at all, but
No,
there is an element with Twitter where, I hate to say it, you are poking the bear at a certain point. If you're continuing, this is partially why I'm not on Twitter, because I'm the kind of person who will say the wrong thing at some point, and it'll something intended as a joke will be taken as
I'll have to rescue you from a burning stake at some point.
Yeah, and it's just not worth the aggro, frankly. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Let's go through the cast of characters in this movie, Ghostbusters 2016. So we have Melissa McCarthy as Abby Yates, Kristen Wiig as Erin Gilbert. So Abby and Erin are kind of the main characters. They're both scientists, like in the original. They wrote a book about paranormal activity and stuff, which Erin has been trying to move away from. She wants to be a legitimate science person. Abby is quite happy to be a weird paranormal scientist. This has caused a rift in their relationship, but they must get back together over the course of this movie to do some busting. We have Kate McKinnon as Gillian Holtzman, who's our eccentric gadgeteer, I suppose. She makes unstable nuclear devices on the reg, and seems to be having a great time in this film.
Yeah, definitely. Like she's having fun, and her enthusiasm for it is quite charming. I think.
Yes, I think she is a little bit much in this movie, but when she's especially when she's stood next to Kristen Wiig, who is barely conscious in most of these scenes, and
which is a shame as well. Because I really like Kristen Wiig.
It's not a dig at Wiig. She's great. It's just, I think she could see the writing on the wall with this movie. I mean, to be honest, there's only so much you can hear Melissa McCarthy fucking going on about wontons before you realise maybe the script isn't working perfectly well. Rounding out the cast, though, we've got Leslie Jones as Patty Tolan, who is, I guess, our Ernie Hudson stand-in.
Yep. Although she gets a bit more to do.
She does.
Not much, but she gets a bit more to do.
I think it's a little bit interesting that our streetwise, I've got the street knowledge, you've got the book knowledge character also happens to be an incredibly stereotypical sassy black woman character.
Yeah, that...
Whereas the three white women are all PhD doctorate scientists. And they do say Patty, she has a lot of history knowledge, she has a master's degree in history.
Yeah, it's true. It's just, but yeah, when you sort of boil it down to its elements like that, it doesn't look good, does it?
It's a little questionable, especially when you're clearly doing the thing of like, oh well, Ernie Hudson's character was like, he came into the Ghostbusters slightly later. He wasn't one of the founder members. It's like, yeah, and he happened to be the one black member of the team, so they're just kind of like redoing that, and that's what makes it feel a bit weird. It's just kind of like so no black people can be scientists in this universe. They always have to be.
Because they do lift a lot of stuff from the original movie. Not as much as what Ghostbusters 2 does.
No.
It's odd that they chose to keep that intact.
Yeah, it's very weird. Or at the very least...
In favour of having Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig just improv a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot of bad improv in this movie. There's a lot of Melissa McCarthy talking about wontons.
Yeah, it's a shame as well, because like when you were just explaining the plot of the movie, where the two main characters, they were sort of they caused a rift between them when they wrote this book, and like they're actually investigating paranormal stuff together. I'm like, this movie does actually try to have something of a plot, and actually, those two characters do get a fair amount of development, and then it kind of just gets bogged down in this pulpy comedy stuff that is not 100% my cup of tea all the time.
No, and like even from the first scene, you have a scene kind of reminiscent of the library scene in the original, where it's a guy there's a tour guide taking a tour group around, and so this kind of historical building, which turns out to be haunted, obviously. And even in that scene, there's loads of weird throwaway, like what seem to be improv lines about, like, oh, and in this room is where P.T. Barnum first had the idea to enslave elephants, and it's kind of like it feels like ad-lib because the crowd doesn't respond in any way, and it's that weird thing of like, oh, you're just throwing stuff out there, huh? Like,
well, I mean, a lot of this movie feels like that, where a character will say a line and will then cut to some other characters, and they're clearly not reacting to what that character just said.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious.
Oh, yeah, okay, we need to cover the plot a little bit more. So ghosts run rampant in New York City once again. It turns out it's all being orchestrated by this one incel dude, who later on kills himself and possesses Chris Hemsworth, who, by the way, is in this movie playing Annie Potts. Or the equivalent of, which again I thought was a really we'll get into it, but in fact we'll get into it now. I thought it was a really interesting choice because Chris Hemsworth's really funny in general. He's a great comedy actor. I don't love the business they're giving him in this movie because it's like you're just dangerously dumb. It's one of those.
Well, he's
characters.
a himbo, isn't he?
Yeah, but I think again because of the improv nature of the character, it kind of gets lost in just like. He is so stupid, it's unbelievable.
See, I felt more like his character's lines were scripted more than what everybody else's was, because I actually found him to be more consistently funny than most of the characters.
Maybe. I kind of felt they were primarily ad-lib just because they go from like... They kind of range wildly from he's dumb to like, oh, he's so dumb, how does he even exist?
Yeah, like... The fact that he can't figure out how to use a phone.
Yeah. I mean, one of the lines that I did laugh at was when he was possessed by the incel dude who wants to bring all the ghosts about for reasons unclear. When Kate McKinnon goes, give us Kevin back. He's just started to figure out the phones. That did make me laugh.
The gag that made me laugh, well, there's two gags in the movie, because I have to admit, like, I actually did laugh a couple of times during the movie. A couple of gags really did do it for me. One being the bit at the end where Himbo Hemsworth has got the sandwich.
Yeah, that's quite funny,
yeah, then Melissa McCarthy, is it Melissa McCarthy? She takes it off him and throws it on the floor, and he's like, a little help, and some guy off camera just throws the sandwich back to him. Yeah, that really made me laugh. And the whole gag with the guy who runs the concert hall, where they're at that really shitty heavy metal gig.
Yeah.
Where he says that he has a really disturbing scream.
Yeah.
And then he just has this really shrill scream.
I didn't mind that, but it didn't... I don't know, this is going to maybe sound fussy. It didn't feel like a Ghostbusters gag to me. It was kind of...
No, this is the thing. The humour in this movie is not Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
very...
I can understand why a lot of people who love Ghostbusters don't love this movie, and I think
I can see what they're going for though. They were kind of going for an updated Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And
I think they went about it in the wrong way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, and like a lot of the sort of controversy this movie first started when people were saying to it, oh, it's Ghostbusters, but it's women, and it's ruining it, and it's tarnishing this legacy, and all this other bullshit that's just not true.
I think people were mad about the fact it was a reboot rather than a continuation as well.
Yeah, I know there's quite a few people online that really sort of got...
It wasn't all just because there's women, but there was a lot of that.
Yeah, that was definitely the main sort of fuel on the fire, as it were.
That was the thing that people reported on the most.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But I think they've been trying to do a continuation of Ghostbusters for years, and it just kept falling through.
That's why they ended up doing the video games. That was kind of Ghostbusters 3. Yeah.
Obviously, Harold Ramis died as well.
Inconsiderate bastard.
Yeah.
Trying to make a sequel and you go and fucking die.
And so, yeah, I think so. I do at least appreciate that this movie is its own thing. It's a new sort of storyline for it, and it doesn't have anything to do with the original movies, and that's fine.
But it does, though. That's the thing. They do have a lot of... Sorry, I'll get to my point in a minute. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think like the ghost stuff in this movie is pretty fun for the most part.
Yeah, I kind of like the cartoony vibe.
Yeah, and like the action sequences are kind of fun. I mean, they often get ruined by Melissa McCarthy saying something stupid.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. There'll be action scenes and then they'll be like, I fell on my butt! Or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, because, it's the same sort of shtick that you have with Melissa McCarthy and people like Miranda Hart. It's fat woman fall down.
Yeah, and this movie is also rife with so that happened kind of humour.
Yeah, where characters comment on something that happens 5 times before moving on to
yeah.
joke.
God, there's an insufferable moment where... Okay, so there's a scene in this where Bill Murray's character turns up. Because we should say, the original cast that are still with us are all in this movie, playing they're playing like not the roles they played in the original movie. They're just playing different characters, cameo characters for the most part. But Bill Murray kind of plays a named character who's a paranormal investigator / debunker, and the women of the Ghostbusters kill him accidentally by releasing a ghost in the to prove to him that the ghost is real. She releases it from the trap, and it's this pterodactyl ghost, which again, what are ghosts in this franchise? But it pushes Bill Murray out the window and he dies. And then when they're being interviewed by the police, they have this thing where she goes, "Oh, a ghost killed him," and then one of the cops goes, "A ghost? Like Patrick Swayze? Like you were making pottery?" And then she was like, "Yeah, we went to camp and then we made pottery." "Oh, you're mixing up 2 Patrick Swayze movies there." "Oh, yeah, well, there's so many good ones. Roadhouse is a good one."
Yeah, and it just goes on.
It literally goes, like, and literally with the enthusiasm that I'm delivering it now. And it's kind of, that's the key issue for me with this movie. It's classic modern American comedy problem where it's like, why put one joke when you could put 5 in? It's like...
Yeah, one joke in particular that stood out to me as having that issue is in the scene where Melissa McCarthy's character is trying to come up with the posters for them. And it starts off funny, where she brings in the poster that says, "If you see something, say something," and they go, "Oh, this is the terrorism."
Yes.
Slogan. And then she says the line, "Oh, that explains why we're getting so many calls about suspicious bags, is it?"
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. And I was like, you didn't need the suspicious looking bags bit. I feel like you could just say, "Oh, that explains why we're getting so many calls." Like, that alone would have been fine. I feel like they stretch jokes out.
Yeah,
and
they have to spell it out to everyone. Yeah,
it's stuff like that where it doesn't really have any sense of subtlety.
I think as well, there's a real issue with this, and this is maybe a product of just not very good improvisation. Where like you get this, like, okay, so the scenes we just described could have been between any number of the main 4 characters. So like the Patrick Swayze bit is between Abby and Erin mostly, but that could have been between Erin and Holtzman, or Abby and Holtzman, or Abby and Patty, or Patty and Holtzman, and it'd be the same scene, and you wouldn't be like, why are they just dribbling shit? That's not what these characters do.
None of the
because every character in this movie just dribbles shit the whole movie.
Yeah, and not character specific shit either.
No. Yeah, whereas like in the original, I think one of the strengths is like the characters all stay pretty consistent, even into Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, and their interplay with one another is built around their
like so for example, Spengler in the original movies does not have the same kind of humour that, you know, Bill Murray's character does, where he's kind of mouthing off and being a bit sassy or whatever. But there will be those moments where Spengler says something kind of dry and a little bit cutting, or a little bit kind of sarcastic, and the other characters are like, "What?" And he always has that kind of like raised eyebrow kind of vibe to him. And it's like, it's very basic stuff, obviously, but like, I just feel that Ghostbusters 2016 just kind of lacks that. And it's a shame because all of these actors are great comedians and really funny and a lot of other stuff. Like Melissa McCarthy's hilarious in Bridesmaids.
Absolutely. The scene where she's shitting in the dress in the sink is just, it's spectacular. It really is.
Yeah, so that's kind of Ghostbusters 2016, really.
Yeah, I mean, when you get towards the end of the movie, it becomes just like the first 2, big battle against giant monsters and ghosts all over the city, which is all culminated with them shooting the giant monster in the dick.
It does have... yeah, okay, maybe there might be a metaphor there.
Yeah, that was one of the things where I went, okay.
Yeah, and it is kind of notable that the guy who unleashes all the ghosts is a bit of an incel sort of guy. And he even has a quip about women always late at the end.
Yeah, and he possesses, Chad extraordinaire Chris Hemsworth.
yeah. I thought Hemsworth was great in those scenes where he was the villain, as well as...
He's the best thing about the movie, I think.
He's fun.
He's having the most fun, I think. He's, he gets some really funny gags, and he gets to cut those. Like, the whole running gag that Kristen... I keep just referring to the actress.
She plays Erin.
Erin, that's it. Where Erin is just constantly just trying to get on him. Like, that becomes tiresome after the second time.
It's kind of faintly amusing at first, but then becomes a bit... And again, this is kind of something that we breezed past, but like, it's kind of weird that they do the whole, he's a himbo that the girls sort of lust after a little bit. Although I'm not sure Holtzman drinks from that particular cup.
Yeah, I got vibes too.
I mean, it might just be because it's Kate McKinnon, but at the same time...
Yeah, well, but,
she's definitely chirping onto Erin the whole movie.
Absolutely.
But,
even if Erin's not realising it.
And this is kind of one of those things as well, right? Where this is one of those movies where it has a lot of women in it and it goes, oh, possibly a bit of lesbian flirtation, but it will never commit to having the characters, like, be each other's love interest and actually have it be a thing. I'm sure there are several Tumblr fan communities who have written extensive Erin Holtzman fan fiction, and to those people I salute them. Let your freak flags fly. You're the true Chads. This is my opinion on fan fiction now. You're the true Chads, because we all just sit around being like, oh, I wish they'd done this. You've listened to fucking hours of this podcast, listeners, of me and Marc going, oh, they could have done this, they could have done that. The fan fiction writers, they get on it, they get in there.
Well, I mean, that's what a lot of franchise cinema is now, isn't it? You know, it's written by fans, and it's, we're seeing that more and more, and I feel like Ghostbusters Afterlife is kind of...
Oh, listeners, are you hearing that segue? Marc's powering up the segue there. That was one of the smoothest ones you've ever done.
What can I say? I glide in liquid smooth.
He does, straight in, no kissing. But, yes.
Call me soft velvet, I'm coming in.
And yeah, okay, so we'll move on to Afterlife, but before we do... one point that I was going to make, but I think we got sidetracked into other stuff. This movie has a weird relationship with the past movie. Because as we've said, or the past movies, because as we've said, it's a complete reboot, but it is definitely playing on nostalgia. Because we have like a new version of the Ghostbusters theme playing at one point in the movie. The awful Fall Out Boy / whoever else cover. Because there's some rapping on it and stuff as well. It's not good. But
and that song is especially terrible when you consider that there is a song on the soundtrack for this movie, which I don't recall hearing in the movie, which was really sad to me. And it's a song by Wolf Alice called Ghoster. It's a really great song, and I don't recall it once being used.
Yeah, I don't remember it being in the film. I know the song, though.
Yeah. It's kind of like low-key a banger, that song, and it's like a really fun Wolf Alice song. And it's nice.
We also have stuff like, so they're driving around in a hearse in this movie, which they are in the originals, right? It's kind of a hearse-looking car.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever explicitly mentioned, though.
Yeah, the one thing they do in the original movie is Ray pulls it up, and Venkman goes, "Oh, what the fuck?" Like, but they never they don't, as they do in this movie, have a scene where they're like, "This is the car that I've procured. It's a hearse. Yeah. It looks like a hearse. It is a hearse. Is there a body in the back? I don't know. I didn't look. There's a body. There's a body. Oh, we should move the body. We'll let Holtzman do it. Holtzman likes that kind of stuff. I can think of 10 good uses for a cadaver today. No, you won't do that. We must move the corpse." What did you think? Oh, yeah, so before we get into what did you think, the other thing that I thought was kind of a weird thing with regard to nostalgia. So they have a bit where when they're setting up the Ghostbusters company, they've got Chris Hemsworth to design some logos for them. And this one actually made me laugh when it's the picture of the girl ghost with the massive boobs. And he's like, did you notice the boobs? I could do them bigger if you want. And he's got a load of other nonsensical. And again, it becomes a gag that goes on too long because all the other images make no sense. Whereas it would just be kind of funny. Yeah, it'd be kind of funny if it was just, it's a girl ghost with big tits. That's kind of funny. But, yeah, okay. And then there's, then there's a bit where they see a guy doing some graffiti who's seen one of the ghosts that they need a description of, so he starts drawing it. And then Patty's like, "Stop doing graffiti on the subway. I work here, man. What are you doing?" And then he's like, "I get it. No ghosts." And he draws the circle with the line through it, and it's the Ghostbusters logo. And then, just to drive it home, Holtzman takes a picture of it and goes, "Am I on crack, or is that a great logo?" And it's like...
Yeah, everything has to be spelled out, and it's like, you just don't have to do that. Like, it's a shame as well, because there are some funny bits in this movie. It's just... I groaned at more jokes than I laughed at.
But that's a scene that could have really worked if the guy had... If it wasn't so painstakingly set up, and the guy had just drawn it for whatever other reason, and then literally they could have had one of the Ghostbusters turn to the other, it doesn't matter because they're interchangeable, and just gone, "That's the one." Like, you don't see the logo until she goes, "That's the one," because we all know what it's going to be, and then you have this soundtrack go, and then you see the logo on the side of the car, and we all know what's happened. We don't have to have this scene where Oh, that's just fucking dumb. But
Yeah.
anyway,
it's a shame.
we're talking around this movie. What do we think? I'm going to go with shit.
I wouldn't fully commit to shit because I would say, compared to say Ghostbusters 2, I found it a bit more entertaining, even though a lot of the humor's kind of groan-worthy.
I was less bored. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's got a bit more energy about it, and it's, you know, the bits that worked did work for me. So I'm still might have to put it in shit because it's not. I wouldn't say it's a good movie, but
Yeah,
I definitely had more fun with it than I thought I would. And you know, despite some very clunky jokes, like that Ozzy Osbourne cameo is weird.
Oh, that is so weird.
Like, why is that in the movie?
Yeah, he has no connection to Ghostbusters. Like, why is he here?
No, and he's clearly like been wheeled onto that set, not knowing where he is.
It should have been. It should have been Ray Parker Jr. And he's just like, Bustin makes me feel good.
I'm gonna have to go shit, but like I'm not fully committed to it. It's like a little nug.
Yeah.
A little bum egg.
The cameos are really weird in this movie too, outside of Ozzy Osbourne. They are quite strange, aren't they?
Doesn't it say something where Ozzy Osbourne isn't your weirdest cameo?
Yeah, like the Dan Aykroyd bit where he turns up and he's a cabbie. And he's like,
bit weird.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts. He says that.
Sigourney Weaver popping up at the end.
It's like Holtzman's mentor.
Yeah, which is fine. That's fine.
Harold Ramis plays a bust at the university.
Yeah.
Because he's fucking dead.
And also
Annie Potts. Annie Potts' cameo was kind of fun. She's like at the hotel or whatever it is, and she's
the clerk. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's talking real posh on the phone, and then when the Ghostbusters talk to her, she's like, "What do you want? I'm working here."
Yeah,
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, she's quite fun.
Yeah, Ernie Hudson turns up as the only other black person in New York, according to this movie, who's also who is Patty's uncle, who they bought the hearse off of. And he's like, "Oh, you've messed up my hearse. I need 2 hearses. Oh, what are you doing to me?" And that's the bit of improv that we end the movie on. There are some mid-credit scenes, all of which are clearly scenes cut out of the movie that they didn't have anything else to do with. But there is a post-credit scene where, as we've established earlier, Zool. I can't remember if we were talking about this off mic or on mic, but Zool makes an appearance where Patty's like listening to some ghost chatter, and she's like, "Hey, I keep hearing this weird thing, this weird name. Who's Zool? Da-na-na-na-na-na. Come back for Ghostbusters, but they're women now too."
Which obviously never happened because this movie bombed.
It's a real wah of a post-credit scene.
Let's have a look. Yeah, so I mean, we say bombed. I mean, budget of 144 million, box office 229. So not terrible.
It was considered a failure.
Yeah,
and also
for Ghostbusters at least
was not well reviewed.
Yeah, because the first movie, the original movie, made a shit ton of money.
Yeah,
and so did the second one, to be fair, but not as much as the first one. So it was considered a failure on those grounds.
I just want to get your opinion on something real quick before we move on to Ghostbusters. They're back now. So this movie, there's been some controversy, some recent controversy. And look, we're not going to get into the cyberbullying of Leslie Jones or anything because we're all on the same page there that is shitty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people's attitude towards this movie is shitty. I think we've done well by not really managing to talk about the gender element of it because it's not really an element of the movie. Oh.
No, it's not. And also, I feel like in our case as well, because we don't have this real attachment to Ghostbusters, the fact that they redid it with a female cast and changed the direction of it and didn't use the same characters doesn't really mean anything to me.
Yeah, it doesn't make any odds. If it was a good movie, I'd have enjoyed it, but it's not. What I was going to say, though, the controversy recently is that there's a Ghostbusters box set of Blu-rays coming out. And it contains Ghostbusters Uno, Ghostbusters DOS, and Ghostbusters : They're All Back Now. But it doesn't contain Ghostbusters : This Time They're Women.
Okay, I mean, I can see both sides.
Yeah.
In the sense that
Paul Feige was beefing on Twitter about this. Paul Feig.
Is it Feige?
I don't know. I was thinking of Kevin Feige from the Marvel movies. But, Paul Feig, him.
No, I can see both sides because on the one hand, answer the call.
Respond to the call, please.
Yeah, pick up the phone. Ghostbusters, pick up the phone. They.
Who are you going to call? That's the question.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why isn't it called that?
Ghostbusters. Who you going to call?
Yeah, that would have been fine. But no, I understand for the fact that that movie doesn't have anything to do with the other three continuity-wise. So no. I understand them releasing a box set which is just that story. However, not including the movie doesn't make that means it's not a complete set. So I see both sides of the coin on that one. I think it's kind of silly to not include it because it is a Ghostbusters movie, whether some people like it or not.
Yeah, I suppose it is that weird thing of they're trying to sell Afterlife as being essentially Ghostbusters 3, and they're kind of trying to pretend that Answer the Call didn't happen. But
Answer the Call isn't Ghostbusters 3 in the literal
it's
sense
Ghostbusters 1, I guess. It's a new Ghostbusters 1.
Yeah. It's Ghostbusters the redo. Like,
there was some talk, because I know that Columbia has been floundering around with Ghostbusters movies. Like, they're always spitballing new stuff to do with Ghostbusters. Like, when they did the all-female reboot Ghostbusters, when that was the in vogue thing to do, as soon as the trailer was poorly received, they were going, oh no, we're going to do another all-male Ghostbusters and it'll be a new team again. Chris Pratt was thrown around because it was 2016.
And hopefully out of a window.
Yeah. And, some of the other typical people you'd expect in 2016. That movie, sadly, never saw the light of day. But they were talking about doing this big Ghostbusters universe and all this interconnecting shit. In fact, you'll notice at the start of this movie and Ghostbusters Afterlife, it comes up with Ghost Corps as one of the production teams.
I did notice that, yes. And it was only when it flashed up at the beginning of Afterlife that I was like, okay, this is clearly something.
So, yeah, they were trying to do this big shared universe Ghostbusters thing.
Because everything has to be a fucking shared universe these days.
But I think they've basically scrapped that, and they've gone with the movie that Marc tried to segue to like 20 minutes ago. But I didn't let him.
I did.
Segue blocked.
I finally got my professionalism on. I got myself lubed up and slid right in, and you just blocked me.
I busted it.
You busted too early, mate. I busted too early. We've just been busting.
We've just been busting, and it's been making us feel good. Afterlife. So this is by director Jason Reitman. Oh, that name sounds familiar. It's because he's the son of Ivan Reitman. Also, he directed Juno.
Yes, I didn't
you remember the
realise
movie Juno.
I do remember the movie Juno. I've only seen it the once. I remember quite liking it.
Yes. So this is a movie. Came out last year, at the end of last year.
November 2021,
yes. Quite well received.
The most recent movie we've talked about on the show, may I point out.
God, it is. Yeah. Pop the champagne.
Bust it.
Bust the champagne. That's so much busting talk. So anyway, this is a movie set 30 years or so after the end of the Ghostbusters franchise? Question mark?
After Ghostbusters 2, it's...
Yeah, they keep saying 30 years. So, Ghostbusters Afterlife is a movie set 30 years after Ghostbusters 2, thereabouts.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Because that's 19...
I wasn't paying attention.
That's 1989, and this movie comes out in 2021.
But COVID.
So it could be set in 2019, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, they say 30 years in this movie. So, suck on that. It is a movie that completely disregards the previous film, set in a different continuity again, but in the original continuity. So yeah, forget those women that we learned about in the last movie. Forget them. Cast them from your mind. We've got new characters now. We've got a young girl who is Spengler's granddaughter. I've just seen this movie just now. Can't remember the character's first name.
Yeah, I watched it today as well, and it's not quite stuck for me either.
Let's say Molly, or let's actually look up the character's name. Otherwise, it's going to get confusing.
Her name is Phoebe Spengler.
Ah, close enough. Molly, Phoebe. It rhymes.
Sure. We also have Finn Wolfhard as Trevor Spengler, her older brother.
Yes.
Finn Wolfhard, who everybody knows from Stranger Things, and he was also in It. He was in that movie.
He loves being in 80s nostalgia pieces.
Yeah, that's very much his niche, and I feel very sorry. Well, I feel very sorry for him when the 80s nostalgia piece bubble bursts.
I mean,
as it
I'm sure
inevitably
he's
will.
making a pretty penny.
I hope so. I mean, he's good friends with the Game Grumps, so maybe he'll do something there.
Carrie Coon
also...
is in this mother.
Yep.
And she plays the
Callie
mother.
Spengler.
Yeah.
Carrie plays Callie. That's not confusing at all.
We got your Paul Rudd.
We got Paul Rudd. Everybody loves Paul Rudd.
Playing Mr. Gruberson.
Who is honestly a bit wasted in this movie, I think. He doesn't really do much.
He was drunk throughout filming.
Probably was.
That's libelous. No, he is wasted in this movie. Yeah, kind of. I mean, he's a supporting character.
Yeah, and I feel like the trailers definitely, or at least the trailers that I remember, played up more the fact that he was in.
Oh yeah, he's on all the posters.
Yeah, whereas, it's Finn Wolfhard and McKenna Grace are really the two.
Well, it's really McKenna
central
Grace's movie, I
characters.
would say. Phoebe is the main character.
And she's great.
She is really good. Okay, so we should briefly go over the plot because people might not have seen this one.
Yeah,
so,
and also obviously spoilers for Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yeah, I mean, there's not that much to spoil, but it's there.
Well, yeah.
So basically, the premise of this movie is Egon, the character, has recently died after living out his last 10 years or so, possibly more. I forget the timeline. Basically, being a crazy old man who lives in like a farm and is insane. Or at least everyone thinks he's insane. The original Ghostbusters, we find out, have disbanded, and there hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years. Cannot stress that enough. However...
Yeah, because that is a point of contention for me.
Yeah, I'm not really sure because it's like, well, ghosts exist in this universe, so what?
And nobody seems to talk about that.
Well, they kind of make allusions to the fact that people are like Finn Wolfhard at one point is like, oh, I know the story of the New York hauntings or whatever.
But Phoebe doesn't.
Well, she is supposed to be quite a bit younger, I suppose. But
yeah, I know, but they have definitive proof that ghosts exist, and everyone would know.
True, but I also feel like if you ask some of these Gen Zs you hear about so often on the news, if you were like, "What's 9/11?" they might be like, is that a thing that happened? Like, they wouldn't necessarily have like a very concrete grasp of it. They'd just be...
I think there's a difference between terrorism and the existence of the supernatural, but that's...
it's roughly... I'm just saying it's a roughly equivalent thing between universes.
Okay, yeah. I just think that it's a bit... It's one of those sort of awkwardly written parts of the story, I think, where they have to have somebody explain the events of the previous movies, even though if you're watching this movie, you've seen the... Anyway, you know what I mean?
I will say, it is kind of... it's shown at the end of the first movie that the government are unconvincingly trying to claim that it was hallucinogenics in the water that caused the... is that in the first movie? Yeah, I think it is. Was that the first movie or was that in the 2016 movie? They've all melded it into one.
Well, in the second movie, the residents of New York take up arms and sing when the Statue of Liberty starts, stomping down the street. I don't think people are going to believe that was acid.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't it? But they need everyone...
They kind of sweep it under the rug a little
bit. But they need everyone to have
they...
forgotten about ghosts again, because like in the second one, they want to make a movie about the legacy of the first one. So it's the Star Wars it's the Star Wars problem, isn't it? Where every new iteration of Star Wars in film, the Jedi have to have disappeared so that we can go, oh, the Jedi are so mysterious. It's the same thing where it's like, no one's seen a ghost for 30 years, so that our main characters can be the ones who encounter them. But anyway, the point is this. Turns out there's a Gozer temple not too far from where Spengler was setting up camp. Because it turns out this fella, Ivo Shandor, he's buried in this site because it's like an old a disused mining tunnel system. And
there's like a giant sort of like vault temple thing.
Yes. And it is very much the Gozer sort of throne thing that you see in the first movie with the two hellhounds either side of it.
Why that place is connected to Sigourney Weaver's fridge, I don't know.
We may never know.
Yeah.
But frankly, Bustin makes us feel good, so let's continue. Let's press on. Anyway, the point is this. You get the idea. Gozer's up to their old tricks again. The Keymaster and the Gatekeeper come to life again and possess Carrie Coon and Paul Rudd. And again, the movie makes it very clear that some pipe is laid. Some nuts are busted.
And in basically the same way that it does in the first movie, where you see Weaver and Moranis sort of dishevelled and getting themselves together after smashing bits.
Yeah. I did like that they kind of kept the element that, like, when Paul Rudd is taken over by the Keymaster, he kind of acts in the dorky way that Rick Moranis does, which I think is kind of funny because it just implies that the Keymaster's a bit of a dork. Yeah,
I like that, but it also goes into an area which is probably one of my biggest problems with this movie, where it sticks too rigidly to the original.
Yeah. Because we have some Stay Puft Marshmallow Men in this movie, for example.
Yeah, several
little ones this time.
Several little ones that look perfect for making toys of to sell.
Well, quite. Oh, we forgot to say in Ghostbusters Answer the Call, who's there? It's women. They also have a Stay Puft.
That's the most facetious title of the
They also had a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in that movie, in the form of a kind of like a Macy's Day Parade balloon that had come to life.
Yeah, but like that was kind of more of like a wink nudge, whereas this is there's shit tons of.
I don't know. I pretty much groaned when I groaned an equal amount of both scenes.
Yeah, I feel like in this movie where Paul Rudd is in Walmart and he's being attacked by all the little marshmallow men, which again tonally is a weird scene because not only are they all kind of being cute and weird, they're also kind of a lot of them are committing suicide and stuff. It's very peculiar.
Yeah, it's kind of Gremlins-y, but yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Krampus.
Yeah, I could see
There's
that.
the scene with like the little gingerbread man and stuff, which is also a movie I'm not that keen on.
I don't mind Krampus.
It's tonally weird, and that's what it's like this movie in places, I think.
The long and short of this movie is the kids find Spengler's ghost-busting gear. They decide to go and bloody well save the world. Not before the old Ghostbusters show up, however, to lend a helping hand. Because earlier, what's she fucking called? Maddie?
Phoebe.
Phoebe calls Dan Aykroyd up and is like, "Hey, be in this movie, please." And he's like, "No thanks." But yes, they all turn up at the end and save the day. Apart from Harold Ramis. But of course, there is the CGI ghost of Harold Ramis, who thankfully does not have lines in this movie. But
no, but that made it all the more.
Yeah, it makes it quite weird because they directly address it. Do you know what? I'm going to say something about this because I knew this was coming. Right, I'd heard about this soon.
I didn't know that they went that far. I knew that the original cast were in it. Yeah. I didn't know that all of them were, despite one of them being like brown.
I wasn't blindsided by it as some viewers were. However, I will say this. I think it almost worked so there's a scene towards the end where Gozer turns up and the old Ghostbusters are launching their proton packs, but then they cross the streams like in the first movie, but then Gozer has learnt to uncross the streams and flings them around, and it's all, oh dear, they're old and they can't get up. And then Phoebe turns up and she blasts them, because Gozer is explicitly referred to as non-male or female in this movie.
Yes, which makes sense. It's just that sort of female form that we've seen them in beforehand. I guess it's like where Pennywise is its favourite form to appear in.
So Phoebe is blasting Gozer with the proton pack, and then we see because she speaks to Spengler earlier on, but you don't see a manifestation of him. He's just like twisting lampshades, or twisting lamps and lights around.
His presence is felt throughout the movie.
And he physically shows the things in his garage and stuff. But then at the end you see him manifest as a CGI reconstruction of old Harold Ramis. I thought it was fine when he was just helping her lift the proton pack. I was like, you know what, that's actually fine. When it got into later scenes where the old Ghostbusters is like, "Hey, you should have called, man, I missed you," and he's just stoically nodding. That's a bit much for
awful.
me. That was
awful.
That's a bit much for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like even that bit where she's using the proton pack and he's helping her, I feel like you didn't even need to see his face.
Yeah. I think the fact that you do is fine, but then they drag it out.
And having Bill Murray interact with him,
very weird.
That really left a bad taste in my mouth.
It's clunky. Really. And again, not to completely compare everything to Star Wars, but it's very like in Rise of Skywalker where they have the stock footage of Carrie Fisher.
And it's like superimposed over her daughter's face.
And it's incredibly obvious that it's scary. It's stock footage.
I feel like it's hard to not compare this movie to the new Star Wars movies, because it's very much this idea that we're getting now of, as they're saying, a requel.
Or the legacy sequel I've seen.
The legacy sequel. I like legacy sequel, which I've just recently seen the latest Scream movie, which is...
Yeah. I've recently seen The Matrix Resurrections, which is also that.
Yeah, and, you know, the new Scream movie, obviously it's just come out, so I won't really say much about it, but the Scream movies have always kind of poked fun at what's going on in cinema at this point, and the new Scream movie is no different, and it's talking about this entire movement that we're seeing within
these
franchise
nostalgia pieces.
And
this movie kind of
makes some very good points about it.
It lives and dies on nostalgia. That's my main issue with this movie.
Because
I think there's a lot of good stuff in it. Like, I quite like I like the new cast to the point where when the old ones turned up, I was like, oh, okay. Like, it wasn't like a big moment for me. I was, wasn't really that invested in it. I mean, maybe if you're a big Ghostbusters fan, it's something. But I don't know.
Yeah, but again, like they also kind of show up, and it doesn't really add a whole lot to the movie.
No, they just show up to show up, really.
Yeah, it's like a contractual obligation. But yeah, I agree. I think Phoebe is a really quite compelling protagonist, and to my mind as well, a really quite sensitive depiction of somebody who is on the spectrum as well.
Yes.
Because I think that they approach that subject and like her characterization in a fairly respectful way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's never overstated and never overdone, and like a lot of her sort of personal quirks and stuff.
Yeah, there's no scene where it's like, this is because of your mental problems. But it's, they make it clear that she is perhaps on the spectrum, disordered in some way.
Yeah, they don't explicitly say what it is, but you get enough to know. From what I was assuming, she has Asperger's.
Yeah, I don't think it's even called Asperger's anymore, but autism spectrum disorder, or whatever the correct terminology is.
Obviously, these things, like their classifications and stuff move so fast, so I do apologise if I've got that incorrect.
No, I don't think it's offensive or anything. I think it's just not a term they use anymore. Although I think some people who were diagnosed with Asperger's still prefer to be. They're like, oh, I'm an Aspie for life, sort of thing. So I think it's down to personal preference, but I think I'm right in saying, correct me in the comments, that the correct medical definition now is autism spectrum disorder, because it is a spectrum rather than a single condition.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and I felt like the sort of the characterization of Phoebe was done really well in that regard. I thought.
Yeah, I do too. I like that there wasn't a scene of her being like, I have this condition and it torments me. She seemed quite happy in her own existence.
It's only like the only time it's drawn attention to is where she points out to somebody that she doesn't express emotion or understand emotion in the same way that they do.
Yeah,
and like, because all the way through the movie prior to that, you kind of get that. Yeah,
she explains it to the character Podcast, who obviously.
That's a character I had mixed feelings on.
I mean, you should support a fellow podcaster, Marc.
I did like the running gag that his podcast came into it found its voice in episode 46. I thought that was quite a good gag. And it's one of the few gags. To be fair,
I also thought it was quite cute that Ray was his only listener.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. Yeah. I did enjoy that.
Came to his own in episode 46. Yeah.
One thing that I will have to say about this movie, because you mentioned how this movie lives and dies on nostalgia, but it doesn't necessarily live and die on Ghostbusters nostalgia. It's tonally and the way it's presented, it feels more like it's nostalgic for films like E.T. and Stand By Me.
Yeah, it's got a very
80s properties.
Yeah, it's got a very Amblin feel to it.
Yeah, and then you kind of watching it and it's got that vibe, and then a ghost that eats metal and spits nails at people shows up and they have to get it with a proton pack, and it just feels really kind of at odds with itself in places. I thought, like, as you probably gathered, I wasn't particularly taken with this one. I thought it was fine. I thought it was entertaining.
I like. Well, we'll get into rankings later. I definitely like this more than the 2016 one, possibly because I just found it less irritating.
Yeah, I think I found the 2016 one more entertaining, I would say. This one, this one's just over 2 hours, isn't it? I think it's the longest of the Ghostbusters movies.
Yeah, by a few minutes.
Yeah, and I think my other problem was it was particularly by the end. Not only the creepy ghost of Harold Ramis showing up, which I just found a little bit distasteful, and the kind of zombified old cast members showing up for a battle with Gozer. Like it all just kind of felt a bit bland towards the end because I was like, right, we're fighting Gozer and we're doing this again.
Yeah,
and you also
I thought it was an interesting choice to go for not only Gozer but the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper all over again. Like, it's not...
And shoot their scenes exactly the same as they were in the original.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one, that, because I was sort of thinking, like, they could do Gozer again if they're kind of going with this Lovecraftian vibe, but have it be a different avatar of Gozer, and have it be, like, a different aspect.
It's basically just the same form as the first movie.
I mean, I thought Gozer looked really cool in this movie.
Yeah, like, there's a lot more sort of emphasis on the design of Gozer. And Gozer also kind of gets that sort of like ghostly form as well, which was kind of cool. And I do like the reveal at the end that the entire farm that the family live on throughout most of the movie, the entire thing is a ghost trap.
Yes, it's quite really reminiscent of the 2018 Halloween film. So I knew exactly what he was going to say there.
Yeah, as soon as those traps opened, I was literally in my head. I just heard Judy Greer saying, "It's a trap, baby." That's all I heard. And I was like, this movie's redeemed slightly.
Yeah.
Because, that was one of the first of these cycles of these, like, Lego sequels that we've been seeing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I will say, the tone is an interesting one. It definitely seems caught between a typical Jason Reitman film where he does much more, like, indie character comedy dramas. And I think, actually, when it was doing that, it was kind of at its best. And then when it
was really charming.
And then when it remembered it was a Ghostbusters movie and went, oh yeah, you remember Gozer, right? He Gozer. It was a bit
It's also, again, this movie is just shot just over 2 hours. I made a note that after the beginning, where we obviously have a ghost encounter where you see I watched this movie earlier today. I'll take that again.
No editing.
You edit it down, it's fine.
No.
I did also make a note where this movie is just over 2 hours long, and after the first scene where you see a ghost encounter, another ghost doesn't really show up for about an hour.
Yes, yeah.
You've got all of this like character building stuff and like sort of world building stuff, which is really good and quite interesting. But this is ultimately a Ghostbusters movie, and I want to see ghosts.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, you see the big blue...
You have the munching ghost.
Is he called Muncher or something, isn't he?
It's called Muncher, I believe. I did look that up,
like
but he's voiced by Josh Gad.
Yeah, which is weird, but I thought he was kind of funny. He's like the new Slimer, I guess. He's like just the chaos ghost.
Yeah, and got a couple of new abilities, because I say he chomps through metal and spits metal out and stuff. And again, because the laws of ghosts don't make any sense.
There is a real groaner of a nostalgia bait line. Do you know when so they get arrested for causing chaos in the town? This is when they've sealed Muncher.
I know exactly what you're about to say.
Phoebe goes, don't we get a phone call? To which Bokeem Woodbine, who is in this movie because the man loves a paycheck, I guess. He's in like 2 scenes of this movie. You're like, he's a fine actor. Why are you doing this? But anyway, Bokeem Woodbine goes, Police Chief Bokeem Woodbine goes, oh yeah? Well, yeah, you get your phone call, but who are you going to call? And that's when she calls Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, I mean, it is similarly the bit that line, and also in the previous Ghostbusters movie where Dan Aykroyd said the line, "Who you gonna call?" Like, could you stop saying this line in these movies?
Yeah,
like, and again, this
stop
movie...
referencing the song in the movie.
Yeah,
because again, we're not sure on the canonicity of the song in universe. Although actually, we skipped over this, but. In Ghostbusters: It's women. They're on the phone. Please answer the call. There's a bit where Melissa McCarthy is making notes, and she just randomly goes, "Oh, so I think I've got it. If there's something strange in your neighborhood," and then she's cut off by someone else. So It's like we to understand that in that iteration, Melissa McCarthy wrote the song Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters, and they used it in their promotional material. Okay, fine. That's how it happens in that universe. But in the original universe, to the best of my knowledge, the Ghostbusters song in the first movie is just a song that's in the soundtrack, non-diegetic. But then in the second movie, it implies at some point the Ghostbusters universe version of Ray Parker Jr. wrote the song Ghostbusters and performed and recorded it. And apparently licensed it out to the Ghostbusters to use at kids'
for
parties.
them to sing at children's parties.
Although I'd imagine that actually, to be fair, with these guys, we've seen them skirt around the legalities of certain things in the past. I don't think I think they just took the cassette to the party. I don't think they licensed the song.
And then obviously, I guess in Afterlife, we're just because everybody forgot about Ghost existing, therefore they forgot about the Ghostbusters existing, therefore they forgot about the song.
There should have been a bit where Finn Wolfhard had some AirPods in, and then you see what he's listening to, and it's Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. And then he should have turned to the camera and gone, "Remember from the first movie, this song from the first movie, remember?"
Yeah, I also feel like Finn Wolfhard is a little bit wasted in this movie as well. He doesn't really get to do much other than drive a car and scream a bit. He gets little like sappy romance.
He gets to try
girl,
and chirps that girl who's clearly
who is infinitely more charming than him. And
what's going on with that? Because there's a bit, there's an almost a Hocus Pocus-esque moment where when they're looking through the Gozer temple.
That's a troubling sentence.
I know. The Binksometer. It's a beeping. But there was a bit where they go to the Gozer temple beneath the mining complex, and they're like, "Oh, human sacrifices occurred here. Oh, who would they sacrifice?" And then the teenage girl that he's chirping goes, "Virgins, so you're out of luck, mate," kind of thing. Like, just teasing him. And then his sister drops him right in it. Phoebe goes, "Oh, well, it's actually fairly common for the majority of 15-year-olds are virgins in this country." And I was like, what is happening with this Hocus Pocus shit in the middle of my Ghostbusters movie? But then she's like shocked that he's 15. So how old is she supposed to be? Because they all look the same age to me, and that age is 10.
Yeah, I didn't get that bit as well. I was like,
is she supposed to be like 18 maybe? Because she's working as a waitress.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think the movie cares enough, so why should we?
I guess, because if she's 18, then at the end, she is kind of like, "Well, actually, I would let you bang." Which, to me, is a bit like, steady on, love.
She's approaching the Binks territory, I think.
I don't think she's a Binks. She's too young to be a Binks. She's just a woman making poor choices. I don't think there's much Binks action in this movie, to be honest.
No, the earlier movies, maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like Rick Moranis. Yeah. Louis Tully's
he's a borderline case of a Binks.
But I think when him and Janine get together, he kind of settles down and sees the error of his ways.
But then did him and Janine stay together? Because in this movie, Janine's crawling around fucking Spengler's house being like, "Oh, I was his... we were friends," looking wistfully into the corner.
That's true, actually. I feel like probably she would dress Tully up like Spengler, and eventually she just killed him.
Because we know...
Or he's like stuffed and on her sofa. I think that might be...
She murdered him! Okay, well that's...
I think he's stuffed and on the sofa, still wearing the jumpsuit.
Well, that's canon. I mean, the real explanation is that Rick Moranis retired some years ago. But
that is true, yeah.
I will say this about Spengler, though. Who knew he was putting it about? Because the timeline of this movie, right? His daughter is Carrie Coon, who was not polite to discuss a lady's age, but was clearly born in the 80s. So,
yes.
At what point did Spengler, get Bustin, so to speak?
He was slinging his beans all over the place by the sounds of things.
His ectoplasm.
He was packing.
Because
some
by my calculations, she must have been conceived around the time of the first Ghostbusters. In fact, let's look this up before I insult American treasure Carrie Coon by implying she's older than she is.
Well, I don't know, man. I think Spengler could have been laying chum at any age.
Oh, laying chum. Do we have to?
I've got to fill the air while you go on Wikipedia.
Okay, so Carrie Coon is 40 years old as of Well, as of this weekend, is it? Oh, no, well, no, she'll be 41 this weekend. So she was born in 1981. So the original movie takes place in 1984. So assuming the character is the same age as the actress, she was born 3 years before the events of the first movie. Which begs many questions.
I mean, yeah, why? How was Spengler paying child support,
Or maybe he was still with the mum at this point. We don't know.
And Janine was just trying to muscle in on
maybe this is why
man.
Spengler rebuffed Janine's advances.
Because, he was betrothing to another and had a young daughter. But, Janine... You're not Janine's like... Janine, she sees something. She gets what she wants.
Well, as we know...
Like Rick Moranis.
as we know...
And his corpse.
As we know, Janine is Spengler's friend. So, I mean, the listeners just heard some dead air there, but Mark got to see you got to see the full performance of my wistful old Annie Potts face.
I did. It was quite something. I'm a little bit aroused.
I don't want to say I'm a better actor than Annie Potts, but it's for other people to say.
I mean, you could definitely give her a run for it.
Anyway, so Ghostbusters Afterlife. What do we reckon? Good, but I hate it. Shit, but I like it.
I think I've got to go with good, but I hate it. I don't hate it, but I might have to go with that because I wasn't that keen on it, but I can see why it's... I mean, it's a well-made movie, and it's got some really good performances in it. It didn't quite do it for me. I feel it was a bit too reliant on what's come before, especially after when Ghostbusters 2 has already done that and tried my patience enough with that. I didn't need another movie doing it. So I'm going to go with good, but I hate it.
Yeah, I think I might have to do that too, because I broadly liked the film. I definitely liked it a damn sight more than... Ghostbusters 2 and I think the 2016 one. But there are elements that I don't really like. The third act is a load of old chum, in my opinion. Especially all the nostalgia baiting. Like, there's even a post-credit scene where fucking Ernie Hudson's like, because I'm a rich old man now, I can afford to fund the old Ghostbusters house being reopened. There's gonna be a sequel, lads. Which, fine.
Is there going to be a sequel? Did this movie do well?
Just reboot it again, won't they?
They probably will. I mean, let's have a little look. So, budget of 75 million, box office 194.3 million. So that did, most cases would be considered a pretty success.
Yeah, I feel like most of the buzz has been fairly positive, but then people do like to
mixed to positive.
People like to clap like greedy seals for nostalgia. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's what always happens with Lego sequels, as we're saying. When they first come out, they do tend to come out to sort of rapturous applause, and then as time goes on, people start to see the cracks, as it were.
See the crack busted in the side.
Busting out of them cracks.
That's the next Ghostbusters movie. Ghostbusters Skyline busting out of them cracks. So, yes. To conclude the first Aidan and Marc versus a franchise, and possibly the last if the listeners don't go for it. So, no pressure, listeners. I mean, literally no pressure. It doesn't matter at all. And nothing has ever mattered less than what this podcast chooses to do with its episodes.
It's very true.
But what matters even less than that is mine and Mark's power rankings of the installments of this franchise. So,
well, I think we're in agreement, aren't we?
I've got a pretty strong ranking. Do you know what? You do your ranking first, and then we'll do mine. Then we'll discuss.
Well,
so what are you putting in first place?
2 is obviously...
What are you putting in first place?
First place, well, it's got to be the original.
Okay, boom. That's in there.
The best.
Ghostbusters.
It's the best one.
Boom.
Ghostbusters 84, best one.
So second place. The silver.
It's probably going to have to be Afterlife.
Boom.
But I would say I had more fun with the 2016 movie.
Okay, is that what's in third?
I feel like I could easily swap those two around on any day of the week, though. I feel I got the same amount of enjoyment out of both of them, which wasn't a whole lot, but of the two, 2016 was a bit more fun.
And Ghostbusters 2,
but,
resolutely in fourth place.
Yeah, it's like... I watched that 2 days ago, and I barely remember anything about
I watched it this morning, and I barely remember anything about it. I think I broadly agree with your power ranking. In fact, I totally agree with it. I would go Ghostbusters 1, unequivocally first place, just definitely the best. I would put, Afterlife pretty solidly into the second place. I don't think. I mean, it's not as original as the first one, obviously, so that kind of holds it back.
No.
And there's some weird stuff about it where like some of the nostalgia doesn't quite work for me. But maybe if I was a big fan, it would. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
There is also some stuff like they have J.K. Simmons turns up playing Ivo Shander, and it's like
for like no reason.
And he's barely in the movie. And I thought, because I kind of thought like, oh, this movie's going back to the lore, but it's going to be more about like Shander, the magician, but then he immediately gets killed by Gozer. So it's like, okay, it's just...
really quite graphically.
Yeah, that bit I was like, bloody hell. But
yeah, like Gozer literally rips him in
bisects
half.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's no blood or anything, but still, it was quite.
Yeah, it's in camera. Just
quite shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I liked it. I like the cast, like the characters, like the performances. Definitely directed a damn sight better than Ghostbusters 2016 or Ghostbusters 2. So I feel pretty comfortable putting it second. Third is going to be Ghostbusters : Who's that on the phone? Would you please answer the phone? It's women. Despite the fact of the fun we're having with its non-subtitle. Yeah, I do you know what? It's fine. It's kind of...
Yeah, it's fine.
The humour doesn't work for me, and that's kind of the biggest detractor, and it is a big detractor, because 90% of this movie is the characters just riffing on stuff. So if you're not vibing with that, you're not going to enjoy this. But
yeah, and I feel like if you were able to, if they could trim some of that stuff out, it'd just be a much tighter movie.
Yeah, I agreed.
Overall, I think.
And Ghostbusters 2 is a big pile of shit.
Yeah.
So...
I will have to say one last thing about Afterlife, which has just suddenly popped into my head. I love that one of Paul Rudd's character's defining traits is for summer school, instead of teaching his students, he just shows them 80s horror movies.
Yes, yeah.
Because he's shown to be showing the children both Cujo and Child's Play.
Yeah.
So, which I thought was a strange little inclusion, but one that made me smile. So
yeah. So that's the Ghostbusters franchise. That's our first franchise review. We've both gone slightly insane from marathoning Ghostbusters movies over the past couple of days. Let us know what you think of this
we've
new...
been busting.
Yeah, we've been busting. It's made us feel tired, as it so often does.
Yeah, I'm very much ready to go to bed for sure. Yeah.
Yes, this was going to be an hour and 30-minute episode, but it's ballooned.
Yeah, as it tends to.
What we'll say is this: if you enjoyed this new format, let us know. Obviously, this is not going to be the mainstream format of Kino Inferno, but like we could do a few more of these franchise reviews. Where we're not so pressured to go deep into the individual movies. We can just sort of ramble over on the general topic.
Yeah, I feel like it's nice to kind of do something a little bit different, and it's nice to cover. This thing, we get to cover movies that we otherwise wouldn't talk about on this show. So I think that's what I would like to do this more. So if you guys enjoy this,
and also if you've got a franchise you think deserves our particular attention, do suggest it. Obviously, we said the next one we're planning on doing is Scream, which is obviously a big passion of Marc's.
Big fan.
I'm a moderate fan. I haven't seen most of them for a long time.
Although big fan, but have some things to say about each of them.
Some spicy takes.
Probably not that spicy. If you're a Scream fan,
Marc,
you probably know what I think.
Marc, I'm trying to lay some sizzle for the audience. The takes are going to be very spicy.
I think if anyone's going to have some spicy things to say on Scream, it's probably you.
I mean, I'm always unrepentantly spicy.
That's true. You're my favourite little bottle of sriracha, and I love you for it.
Okay. Well, I guess there's only one question that remains to be asked, Marc, and it's this. Does Bustin make you feel good? By which I mean the Ghostbusters franchise on the whole. What do you reckon?
Yeah, they're good. Well, mostly, somewhat. They're alright.
Bustin makes you feel alright.
Bustin makes me feel alright.
Yeah,
I'm
going to have to agree with you on this. If there's any big fans listening, sorry that we're not more enthusiastic. We gave it a red hot go.
We did. But if I'm watching the original movie, Bustin does make me feel good.
For the runtime of the original movie, Bustin makes me feel great.
If it's Ghostbusters 2, though, it's a sad wank in a hotel.
Bustin makes me feel quite bored and a little depressed.
Just like a sad wank.
I guess the 2016 one is Bustin makes an unrelated woman feel good? Question mark?
Yeah.
The analogy's falling down. Afterlife is like Bustin makes me feel good, but not as good as it used to in the 80s.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, it's the acid don't hit the same way anymore.
Anyway, on that bombshell, it's goodbye from me, Aidan.
And it's goodbye from me, Mark.
And it's goodbye from me, Slammer. You never know where I'm gonna come from, baby. It's me, Slammer. One day I'm in your toilet. One day I'm driving the bus.
He does actually drive a bus in one of
He
them,
does.
doesn't
I didn't know he had his license.